Kanda Hajime finally takes a break at his office desk, stretching his arms with a sigh of relief. A female colleague cheerfully asks how the otome game she recommended the other day was. Flashback to a few days ago. She eagerly insists he try it, and he reluctantly agrees. Kanda excitedly reports the game was super fun, deeper than expected, and he got hooked, especially on the character training in free mode. His colleague is thrilled he liked it, but teasingly warns him not to act like a pro. He proudly shows a peace sign, admitting he cleared the entire game despite his dark circles. Narration introduces Kanda Hajime, a 33-year-old salaryman who loves games and anime, satisfied with his life despite its routine. However, his job drags him into drinking parties with clients, and he stays up all night gaming, without realizing it. His body reaches its limit. As his consciousness fades, he recalls collapsing while waiting at a traffic light and thinks of his mother, who passed away years ago. He awakens under an unfamiliar ceiling, confused about his whereabouts. He remembers collapsing at the traffic light and slowly opens his eyes, touching the blanket covering him. Shock floods him as he sees his reflection. A small boy with tiny hands and feet. Panic rises, and he bolts through the hall shouting, only to be stopped by a maid who exclaims he's awake and rushes to inform everyone. Sitting down, he surveys the room filled with 3 maids and a butler. The butler explains they were worried when he suddenly collapsed in the garden. The boy apologizes warmly for causing concern, introducing himself as Rid. The group expresses gratitude for his recovery but humbly deflects his thanks. One maid covers her face, embarrassed by his words, while the butler insists they call him Garn. Rid feels overwhelmed, clutching his head as he struggles to grasp the situation. A bell glows nearby, offered for his use if needed. Memories flood his mind painfully. Images of a girl with sunflowers, a butterfly, and a familiar town. He gasps for breath, trying to reconcile his identity. Though he should be Kanda Hajime, a salaryman, he realizes he is Rid Baldia. The revelation hits him hard as he calls out his name in disbelief. He recalls the otome game he played, Tokarela, where a villainous noble lady interfered with the heroine. Among her followers was a character named Rid Baldia. Realization dawns. He's been reincarnated into an otome game as a minor villainous character. Determined to understand his new reality, he rings a bell to check his situation. Apologizing for the suddenness, a maid appears, concerned if something is wrong. He reassures her. Asking about his age, she corrects him. He just turned 6 last month, not 7. Flustered, he admits his mistake. He asks about the country and his family. The maid explains they are in the Magnolia Empire, bordering beastmen, dark elves, and other nations. The Baldia family is neutral among divided noble factions. He lives with his father Rainer, mother Nunnally, and younger sister Melody. His father occasionally works in the imperial capital's administration. The maid worries if he's feeling all right, while he confirms this is definitely the world of Tokarela. The maid nervously affirms her concern, but he thanks her warmly. Suddenly, she recoils in fear, startling him. He clutches his head in pain as she calls out his name in alarm. Another voice urgently shouts his name as he gasps, overwhelmed by the moment. He reflects on how his past self must have been harsh and scared everyone. The maid kindly asks his name, and he replies it's Danae. She praises the name and blushes, calling him cute. He nervously stammers, offering to serve her, which delights her. The maid cheerfully greets him good morning, his eyes open wide, caught off guard. She offers to help him get dressed, but he flails, insisting he can do it himself, embarrassed by how charming she looks in her maid outfit. Sitting alone at a grand dining table, he marvels at the noble life but wonders why no one else is there. A butler explains his father is in the imperial capital, and his mother, Nunnally, is resting due to illness. The butler suggests he check on Melody, and the boy considers it. The maid leads him down a hallway, mentioning his mother, Nunnally Baldia. He recalls that in the game, she was never named, and he wonders what kind of person she is. They stop before a large door, and the maid gestures for him to enter, while he hesitates with a troubled expression. The maid notices Rid looks unwell and suggests returning another day, but he insists it just feels like he hasn't seen Nunnally in a long time. He feels as if his body and mind are rejecting the place, hesitating at the door. The maid explains that ever since Nunnally fell ill, Rid has been avoiding visiting her. He questions if something happened between his mother and himself as he knocks on the door and hears a voice inviting him in. Inside, Nunnally sits in bed surrounded by flowers, warmly welcoming Rid and expressing happiness at his visit. Suddenly overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, Rid stumbles back, confused by the intensity of his feelings. He sniffs, trying to compose himself, and wonders what just happened. Rid rushes to his mother's side as she coughs, calling out to her anxiously. Nunnally reassures him she is fine and grateful to see him. She thanks him for his concern and apologizes for causing worry. Their hands meet gently as they share a tender moment, both relieved and comforted by each other's presence. He smiles gently, affirming that it's okay, and proudly declares himself the son of his mother and father. The Maki, she returns his smile warmly. He promises to come again, clenching his fist with quiet determination as he thinks of Garn. Confronting Garn, he demands to know the truth about Nunnally's illness, refusing to give up until Garn reveals it. Garn sternly refuses, but then pleads with him to keep the secret about Nunnally's condition. In a grand cathedral-like hall, Garn solemnly reveals the diagnosis: mana deficiency syndrome. The boy listens intently, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Garn explains that everyone has a certain amount of life energy called mana, which normally regenerates over time. However, this illness drastically diminishes that ability, causing gradual weakening and eventual death. The boy recalls recognizing the name and symptoms from his own studies and resolves to seek more information in the study. The boy spots a girl peeking shyly through a door and wonders if she is his little sister, Melody. She nervously asks if he won't be mad if she stays with him. He warmly invites her over and offers to read her a picture book, assuring her he won't get mad. Melody excitedly jumps toward him, thrilled by the offer. He insists she close the door first, and she happily complies. They sit together as he begins reading a story about a princess and an owl, captivating her with the tale. Memories flood back to the boy, Rid's memories, showing a happy moment when Melody was born and how he adored her. But since their mother fell ill, his anxiety grew restless, and some of his anger was directed at Melody. The boy clenches a stuffed toy tightly, overwhelmed by the emotions. The emotional distance between them widened, and they stopped sharing meals. Melody apologizes to him for something, and he gently reminds her not to sleep in the garden. They exchange playful banter about being smart, with Melody proudly declaring herself super smart as they sit together on a couch. The girl shyly suggests he can call her Mel like their mother does, but only because he's special. He accepts the nickname with gratitude, both smiling warmly. As she falls asleep on his shoulder, the maid gently rings a bell to announce this. A man asks if he was with Melody, and the boy quietly reassures them. The man praises him for reading Melody a picture book until she fell asleep and asks him to keep taking care of her. The boy beams, proudly affirming she's his little sister. The man remarks that since collapsing in the garden, the boy seems like a different person. Flustered, the boy denies much has changed but admits he's scared. He reflects that compared to before, it's understandable others see him differently. After reconciling with his mother and Melody, the boy begins to understand what he must do. In the world of Tokarella, he was once the villainous's accomplice, condemned, judged, and exiled, or worse, killed in battle or executed. Determined to avoid that fate at all costs, he resolves to act differently. He writes down a plan but quickly feels overwhelmed, realizing it seems impossible. The plan is to befriend characters in the game who face condemnation, death, or exile, and avoid their tragic routes. Yet, since the main characters appear in the imperial capital or other countries, and he is in the Marquis territory, interacting with them will be difficult. He decides his top priority is to hone his skills to survive on his own. And to do that, he must earn money. Reflecting on his mother Nunnally's treatment, he recalls watching her gradually weaken, unable to do anything, and how much suffering tore his heart apart. He wonders if the emotions he felt when seeing his mother were the same as Rid's feelings. He thinks of her as a kind-hearted child and believes his broken state and family collapse were caused by his mother's illness. If he can restore their family bonds, he might find a way to avoid condemnation and live an honest life. Memories of his mother bring a mix of sorrow and apology as he recalls moments with her and his father. He silently vows never to experience that regret again, clenching his fist with determination. Determined, he declares he will definitely save his mother. He immediately resolves to start gathering information on possible treatments, clutching a book tightly as resolve shines in his eyes. He reveals he has reincarnated as Rid Baldia, a pretty young boy with silver hair and purple eyes. Proudly, he notes his incredible abilities, including memorizing every book he reads word for word, making him incredibly high-spec. Spending his time in the library, he studies various books and recognizes familiar plants, gems, and ores that share names and appearances with those from his previous life. He contemplates raising money in time, just as a man announces the return of Rainer Sama. Today marks the return of his father, Marquis Rainer Baldia, nervous but determined. He asks Garn to inform his father that he wishes to discuss something important. Standing before his father's imposing office, he knocks and waits to be invited in. Inside, his father asks how he is feeling after collapsing in the garden. Rid assures him he is fine now and states he has two things he wants to ask. The father listens attentively, prompting Rid to begin with the first request. He asks if he can learn magic and martial arts alongside his studies, wondering why he remembers Rid from the original game despite Rid being a background character. Rid is a character who transforms depending on training, though his stats start at rock bottom, requiring time to train. In free mode, he becomes useful with all magic attributes. He recalls enjoying challenge runs using Rid and eagerly wants to train. His father replies he had considered this but postponed it due to Rid's mental state, questioning if he can handle it. Rid admits he faltered when seeing his mother weakened but resolved that moping changes nothing and wants to become strong to help her. The father agrees to arrange tutors and asks for Rid's second request. Rid requests discretionary funds, explaining he has many ideas for potential products and wants to make them a reality. The father questions sponsoring him without a proposal. Rid admits it's a gamble but asks if his father would invest in him. The father acknowledges the risk but agrees to prepare funds, noting their father-child relationship improves the odds. Rid thanks him enthusiastically and then asks for another favor now that he's there. Rid cheerfully asks if they could start eating together, lamenting that neither Mel nor he speak much with the other. His father responds quietly, asking if they call Melody Mel. Rid confirms and says he'll think about it. The scene shifts to Rid and Mel sitting happily together at the table. Rid's father nervously asks Melody if he may call her Mel as well, startling her and causing her to drop her food. The view pulls back to show the grand dining room as Melody hesitates. Melody firmly declares that only her mother and an Aichama can call her Mel, shouting that Rid can't. Rid then requests to inspect the territory today. The two maids exchange amused looks while the father accepts and orders Garn to prepare a carriage. Rid beams as two knights, Rubens and Diana, announce they are ready to escort him. He reflects that the Baldia territory is called a borderland due to its distance from the capital, with abundant land for cultivation and flourishing trade. He recalls that it was his father's idea to grow olives. Although the territory is called a borderland, it is far from desolate. Two knights assure Rid they will arrive shortly. Rid reflects that he didn't come just to sightsee but has something important to do in the largest city of the territory, using money he received from his father. Rid, Diana, and Rubens arrive in the bustling city, filled with many people. Diana tells Rid to stay close, and he happily agrees. Diana wonders if this is really the right place as they approach a building. They enter a shop called the Christie Company, where a cheerful maid with cat ears welcomes them. She explains she received a letter from Christie-san a few days ago and will check with him right away. Rid notices the maid's cat ears in surprise. The leader of the Christie Company, Christie Saffron, appears. Rid recognizes her as the only elf in the Baldia territory and a businesswoman. Just as Garn had told him, she offers to show them to the guest room and Rid agrees. The elf woman greets warmly, expressing pleasure in meeting again. While cautioning about leaving two bodyguards outside, the young man insists on keeping their conversation as secret as possible and wants to get straight to the point. She agrees to proceed. Flashback to a few days ago, the young man asks Christie-san if she knows about skin lotion and hair conditioner. He wonders if aloe-based skin lotions exist here, noting aloe grows in this world too. The maid curiously asks what skin lotion is. The young man explains skincare keeps skin moisturized, warning it might dry out otherwise. The maid is puzzled, asking what skincare means. She admits never thinking about it and asks how he knows about it. He says he thought such products would be useful if they existed here. Nearby, aloe plants grow around their mansion. He recalls starting to make skin lotion from aloe around the mansion, then realizing he never heard of hair treatment products like conditioner here. Deciding to create a prototype using olives, he watched videos to learn. Excited, he plans to trade this new luxury product with nobles. The elf woman acknowledges this but points out that without the actual products, they're just ideas. The young man proudly reveals he has already brought prototypes with him, surprising the elf woman. She nervously asks if he's really made prototypes. She hesitantly opens a bottle, then asks if she can try it. He eagerly agrees. She applies the lotion to her hands, testing it carefully. Her expression brightens as she declares the lotion is really good, sparkling with delight. She admits she's worried about her dry skin and never imagined such a product could exist. He beams with relief and joy, confident it will sell well. The elf woman enthusiastically insists he must commercialize the product and asks to be called Chris. She hands him the conditioner, encouraging him to try it. They discuss future plans after talking about the skin lotion and conditioner. He asks her to research two medicinal ingredients, rootgrass and moonlight grass. The young man reflects on doubting the letter's authenticity, wondering who would believe a child's business proposal. He reveals he built a new company far from his family's saffron company, feeling like he was just babysitting the marquis son. Meanwhile, the elf woman and the maid chat, noting Chris is having fun and that they'll be busy for a while. The young man confirms his proposal was happily accepted, hopeful about working with the Christie Company. The two adults ask if it went well and express relief. Despite this, he feels no time to celebrate, fearing banishment or execution if he fails to earn enough money to live independently. He notices a cloaked figure walking through a busy market street and turns his attention. He wonders if the young lady in the cloak is lost. She nervously clutches her cloak, startled when he asks if she is all right. The girl reacts with surprise, caught off guard by the question. The girl explains she is from the Marquis family and apologizes for calling out suddenly. She reveals she got separated from the person she came with. The young man recognizes this immediately. He offers to guide her and asks if she remembers where they parted ways. Suddenly, a confident figure calls out, spotting the girl. The young man warmly thanks the girl for her help. Insisting she raise her head, he smiles, saying it's only natural to help a girl in trouble. The two adults nearby react with surprise, while the girl blushes shyly, her cheeks glowing as she looks down, overwhelmed by the kindness. The princess is found safe, bringing relief to the elf woman who had been worried. Inside a modest room, the princess sits on a bed, surprised as the elf addresses her gently, calling her princess. The princess blushes, lamenting that she never asked the boy's name, while the elf woman softly suggests she might be in love. Meanwhile, a man named Rid is reminded that he should have asked the girl's name. Rid, accompanied by a woman, notices the boy sleeping beside him and suggests returning to the mansion quietly while he rests. Both share a tender smile as they prepare to leave. A cloaked woman named Sandra arrives to meet Rid, introducing herself as his personal tutor who will begin teaching him magic today, her confident smile welcoming him to this new chapter. Sandra Ernest introduces herself as Rid's new magic tutor, expressing pleasure in meeting him. Rid responds warmly, equally pleased. Sandra eagerly asks if he has used magic before, while internally noting her excitement and recalling that Rid should be able to use all elements. Rid admits he has never used or seen magic, only reading about it in books. Sandra explains that to use magic, one must refine the life force inside into mana. The source of magic, she emphasizes starting by making mana from life force. Rid listens intently, nervous but attentive. Sandra promises to guide him every step of the way, urging him to trust her completely. She suggests going to the training grounds and offers to demonstrate actual magic to help Rid imagine it better. Rid agrees enthusiastically. While Sandra sheepishly admits her deep love for magic, they prepare to leave, and Sandra confidently raises her hand, ready to show him a demonstration. She summons a swirling sphere of flames, shouting the incantation for a fireball. She launches the fiery spell with powerful force, creating a dramatic explosion as she displays her magical prowess. Sandra asks what he thinks of the spell she just cast. Rid's eyes widen in awe as he runs toward her, exclaiming how amazing and cool the spell was. Sandra reacts with surprise to his enthusiastic praise. She's still a bit flustered, questions being called sensei, but explains that once he can picture a spell perfectly, he can cast it without chanting. Rid's excitement grows as she demonstrates, and she tells him it's too early for chantless magic. She suggests starting by making mana, and Rid eagerly agrees, clenching his fist in determination. Rid struggles, confused and frustrated, wondering if he lacks talent. Sandra approaches calmly, noting his difficulty but encouraging him. She asks for both his hands and hints at a trick to convert mana. Rid nervously agrees as she prepares to begin. Electricity crackles around Sandra's hand as she grips Rid's wrist. He panics, feeling like his body might break, but she reassures him with a confident smile, telling him it's only a feeling and won't actually happen. A strange feeling stirs inside him, as if something is being drawn out through his palms. He winces, feeling like he's getting shocked, but Sandra urges him to hold on a little longer. His frustration mounts, realizing the sensei is enjoying this on purpose. Collapsing to the floor, he gasps for breath, declaring the experience felt like torture. Sandra apologizes with a light laugh, explaining she used forced mana conversion awareness to make him feel the sensation. He regrets she didn't warn him earlier, though he understands the necessity. Sandra grins mischievously, calling herself a sadist for the harsh method, but insists it made the lesson more effective. She explains the process. Vitality is the source, which converts into mana, enabling magic use. He notices a new sensation inside, a sign of progress, and focuses on compressing it tightly as instructed. She guides him to recall the fireball spell, clearly picture it, and call out its name to hit the target. Determined, he gathers mana into his fist just as Sandra showed him, preparing to form a ball of fire aimed at the target. He shouts the spell's name and unleashes a swirling fireball toward the target. Sandra watches with wide eyes, clearly impressed and a bit surprised by the sudden success. Excited, he exclaims that he really did it, while Sandra calls his name, amazed. She admits she didn't expect him to master both mana conversion and spell casting on the first day. She explains that casting a spell remains difficult even after learning mana conversion, and usually requires much practice to visualize properly. Sandra praises his imagination and suggests he might be a genius. He beams with joy, raising his fist in triumph as he recalls casting multiple fireballs that all hit the target. He reveals he challenged himself to cast without chanting, and it worked flawlessly. Sandra, still holding her notes, looks on in surprise. He admits he got carried away, and Sandra reminds him he's low on mana and it's time to study more. In a new scene, Sandra explains that while mana amounts vary at birth, the more mana one uses, the larger their mana pool grows. She says natural recovery is the only current option, though many countries seek ways to improve it without success. Sandra then teaches about attribute magic, elements like fire, water, earth, and others that mana must be converted into before casting spells, and special magic, which supports other magic like her forced mana conversion awareness, an invention of her. Sandra explains the vast variety of spells available and encourages Rid to create his own someday. He eagerly agrees to start by getting used to mana conversion, promising to do his best. The open grounds outside inspire him, thinking how fun it is to do more. A man watches him thoughtfully, calling him Rid-sama. Rid stretches awkwardly, explaining he's just warming up and usually runs before exercise, but never does strange moves like these. The man questions the odd movements, and Rid realizes there's no concept of gymnastics in this world yet. Despite poor reflexes in his past life and lack of confidence, he resolves not to shy away from martial arts training with Knight Rubens. Rubens encourages Rid, complimenting his knack for it and inviting him to spar. Rid happily accepts, taking a stance and swinging a wooden sword as Rubens watches with a confident smile. The sparring begins with Rid shouting his intent and attacking. Rubens blocks the strike effortlessly, prompting Rid's surprise as he wonders what is happening. Rid feels his body lighten as he swings the sword, finding the motion exhilarating. He realizes this means his physical abilities are quite high, almost as if he's naturally talented at everything. The clash of swords echoes as he smiles, energized by the progress. Knight Rubens calls to stop the sparring session, praising Rid and suggesting he might surpass Rainer someday. Though flattered, Rid feels conflicted. Rubens then asks if Rid is childhood friends with Diana, the woman who guarded him before. Rid confirms they lived close as children. Rubens suddenly asks if Rid likes Diana. Catching him off guard, Rid stammers, surprised by the question. Rubens teases him, saying all the maids and knights think Rid is too much of a coward to confess his feelings. Rid internally calls himself a coward, embarrassed. Rid curls up, overwhelmed by the teasing and unsure if he went too far. Diana approaches, asking what's wrong. Rid notices her arrival and calls out to her, while she looks back with concern. Diana comments that Rubens is fragile in strange ways and sometimes ends up like this. The boy asks if that's true, while another watches nervously. Diana then asks what he told Rubens, causing him to stiffen. He admits he said Rubens was too much of a coward when it comes to him and worries if he messed up, feeling the atmosphere freeze over. She suddenly summons a terrifying Hanya masked spirit behind her, startling the boy, who cries out. She ominously warns that they'll have a long talk later. The boy is shocked and asks why she's here. Diana slaps him sharply, calling him Rubens, asserting her presence firmly. She smiles warmly, asking if his training with her is over for today. The boy nervously agrees as they walk away. Narration explains Diana quickly rose to the top of Rid's list of people not to mess with, and that he learned never to interfere in other people's love affairs. Mel beams with joy, telling Rid how much fun it is to hear all the different voices when he reads picture books aloud. Rid blushes, embarrassed but pleased by her praise. He admits he's glad Mel likes it, though lately he feels pressured, as if she'd scold him if he didn't perform the acting. He notices Mel's expression has shifted, becoming more serious. Rid's mother praises his talent, comparing him to an actor. While Mel proudly claims credit for encouraging him, the mother smiles warmly, gently touching Mel's head, showing affection. Rid watches quietly, sensing the supportive atmosphere. A somber reflection reveals that Rid's mother suffers from a fatal mana deficiency, a secret known only to a few in the family. Though she seemed fine earlier, she now looks pale and weak. She insists on ending the day's session, despite Rid's protests, explaining she expects a guest. Mel and the mother exchange a soft farewell. Christy Saffron arrives energetically, holding bottles of lotion and conditioner, announcing promising progress in their commercialization efforts. Rid's narration explains that since leaving prototypes with Christy, he's had several meetings with her, and all aspects of production, from raw material cultivation to factory preparation, have been advancing smoothly. Christy expresses surprise at how capable Chris is. While Chris humbly credits Rid's funding for their progress, they discuss the next step. Ramping up production, Christy emphasizes the importance of educating people about common healthcare knowledge and how to use their products properly. She wants to highlight differences between species and individual skin types, like sensitive, oily, and dry skin. To ensure compatibility, Chris admits amazement at Christy's extensive knowledge. Chris focuses on the most crucial issue: countermeasures against imitations. The plan includes customer service, a brand logo using the Baldia family crest, and store management. Chris intends to have both the Christy and Saffron companies assist with these efforts, teaching customers how to use the products and accepting returns if the products don't suit their skin. Christy reacts with shock when Chris suggests she become the poster girl for the products. Chris enthusiastically agrees, praising her as the perfect choice. A flashback reveals that a few days earlier, Rid's father entrusted Chris with the vital task of presenting the products to the Magnolia Empire. He plans to send a representative from the Christy company to accompany Chris on the trip to the capital. When Chris questions if Rid is not going, his father explains that Chris's elegance and beauty make her far more suitable for the role, especially since Rid's youth might cause others to doubt his opinions on women's beauty. A young boy smiles brightly, convinced that once people see how Chris has become even more beautiful using the products, many men will want to gift them to their wives or daughters. A man doubts if such thoughts could really come from a 6-year-old. But the boy insists it's true. The man agrees to head to the capital with the representative of the Christy company. An elf woman nervously admits she's not confident but will try her best. She then presents a glass-encased flower to the boy, who reacts with surprise. The flower is revealed as moonlight grass, one of the medicinal plants the boy had Chris search for. He thinks that if he processes it, he can delay the advance of his mother's illness, tears welling up as he contemplates this. The elf woman asks the boy to raise his head and thanks him. She explains she hasn't found the rootgrass yet and asks him to wait a little longer. Narration explains that the ingredients for skin lotion and conditioner will be grown in the Baldia territory, with the Christy company handling manufacturing, packaging, transport, sales, storage, and customer service, while part of the proceeds will go to the boy. Several days later, the boy and his father set off for the capital to present the product to the imperial couple. The boy struggles over a book, admitting he doesn't know anything about pharmacology. His father suggests asking Sandra for help. Sandra, adjusting her glasses, asks if he has something he wants to ask. The boy looks up, holding a quill, as he learns that the mana potion made from moonlight grass should work as a stopgap until a proper cure is made, even if it can't fully heal his mother. The boy explains the medicinal herb to the woman, showing her a preserved sample under glass. She asks what it is, and he tells her it has mana restoration properties. She reacts with surprise and urgency, rising from her seat. The woman identifies the herb as moonlight grass and can't believe it actually exists. She recalls her time as director of a research lab in the capital, where she researched mana potions. The boy reflects on how Sandra told him about her experience there. A flashback reveals Sandra's past. Elite mages gathered in the capital to develop a mana potion, and Sandra was highly regarded for her knowledge and made director. Yet, she finds it strange that the goods due last week have not arrived. The woman hurries through a grand hallway, worried the research progress will be delayed again and she must change the formula. She apologizes to a woman in a hat, then pauses as someone mentions a new guest at the palace, wondering what it could be. A noble woman with a sly smile calls someone a rat crawling around, unsettling her. She asks the director how the research is progressing. The director, wearing glasses, realizes some nobles despise her for spending money on personnel without considering their status. As the research yields no results, more people quit, causing a personnel shortage. Sandra resigns from the lab, taking responsibility. Her family disowns her, fearing repercussions. Others say she should have been executed or banished. At her lowest, she struggles alone on a bench. Marquis Raynor steps forward and offers to take Sandra in as a tutor. Surprised, she accepts, acknowledging that now she is here. In a grand library, the boy confesses to Sandra that his mother suffers from mana deficiency and asks for her help. He wants to create a mana potion to buy time. Though no cure exists yet, Sandra questions whose family he means. The boy urgently tells Sandra he needs her help to make a mana potion. He looks determined, while Sandra listens intently, surprised by the request. Sandra, moved by the boy's plea, agrees to help, promising to do her utmost to save Nunnally-sama. The boy expresses heartfelt gratitude, clasping her hand tightly. She recalls her promise to create a research lab for herself and to prepare anything needed through the Christy company. She holds a preserved moonlight grass flower, the only resistance they could muster, explaining how they failed to obtain it at the capital. The boy calls out to her, drawing her attention. She smiles warmly, telling the boy he can call her Sandra in conversation, but to keep calling her Sandra-sensei during lessons. She proudly shows off the preserved flower, while the boy beams with excitement and relief. The boy shields his eyes from the sunlight, thinking that his father and Chris must be struggling right now. The scene shifts to the capital, where a young elf woman with braided hair looks tense and worried as armored knights stand nearby. A refined woman with an elaborate hairstyle and elegant dress praises the skin lotion and conditioner she uses, then wonders aloud if the production method and rights would be sold to the Magnolia Empire. The young elf woman reacts with shock and calls out urgently, "Rit-sama!" Marquis Rainer tells Christy they will soon reach the capital and asks if she is ready. He warns her to be extremely careful with her language and attitude, reminding her the capital is a fearsome place where even a marquis is just a powerless pawn. Christy, excited, vows to do everything she can as a merchant, calling this an extremely rare opportunity. She beams with determination, while a cheerful girl with cat ears smiles brightly, saying she can see it now. Christy gazes out over the vast fortress city, marveling that no matter how many times she sees it, the sight never loses its impact. White birds soar above the sprawling city enclosed by massive walls and waterways. The overwhelming scale of the capital is shown in detail, with its towering castle and dense urban sprawl surrounded by thick walls and a moat. The city's complexity and size leave a strong impression as birds fly overhead. The narration explains the Magnolia Empire is encircled by 2 layers of castle walls. Near the castle lie the noble quarters, surrounded by a 5-meter-tall wall and moat, while beyond that lies the common town, protected by its own walls. Rainer has already gone ahead, but their carriage inspection is taking a long time. Christy and the cat-eared girl note that the elf capital is not nearly this big. Guards stop the group, demanding a thorough inspection because they heard something was to be presented to the Imperial Majesties. Marquis Rainer assures them his companions are trustworthy. Firmly placing a hand on a guard's shoulder, the guard reluctantly allows them to pass. Sandra and the cat-eared girl enter the building, the door closing behind them. Marquis Rainer explains that the guards just now work for Count Roland and act in his interest. Sandra apologizes for the guard's behavior and promises to be more careful. Rainer admits he should have explained things beforehand and didn't expect the guards to appear directly at the gate. Suddenly, a voice calls out, recognizing Marquis Rainer. A stout man with a mustache greets Marquis Rainer warmly, noting the coincidence of meeting here since the Marquis estate is far away. He asks about the beautiful lady accompanying Rainer. Sandra introduces herself as Christy Saffron. The man smiles slyly, claiming to have heard about her. The man accuses Christy of being disinherited and having left the Saffron Company. Calling her a shrew, Sandra looks shocked, but the cat-eared girl urges calm. Noting the rumors are baseless, she points out that Sandra always has a beast man with her, and the man muses that beasts tend to stick together. The cat-eared girl's eyes widen in shock as she realizes that Count Roland deliberately provoked Christy by calling beast men beasts. A grave insult, she clenches her fist, determined not to let him insult Emma, though doubt lingers in her expression. Marquis Rainer steps forward, sternly reprimanding Count Roland for his reckless insult, reminding him that their guests are here for an audience with the Imperial Majesty. The mustached man quickly apologizes, expressing deep regret before excusing himself. Rainer mutters bitterly about the man's sleazy nature. In a quiet room, the cat-eared girl apologizes to Christy for the trouble caused. Christy reassures her gently, saying she did nothing wrong and that she has already decided to impose a lifetime ban on trade with Count Roland's company. A maid arrives to escort them inside, assuring there's no need to worry since the Imperial Majesty are rational people. The grand audience hall fills with nobles as the maid apologizes for the wait. The Emperor Arwen Magnolia and Empress Consort Matilda Magnolia sit solemnly on their thrones, awaiting the visitors. Rainer Baldia announces his arrival at the castle, apologizing for making Christy come all this way. He asks who the young lady is, prompting her to introduce herself as Christy Saffron, daughter of Baron Martin Saffron from the Astoria Kingdom. The nobleman reacts with interest to her identity. Christy explains her father was only recently granted his baron title. Rainer admits they may not have shown her the respect she deserves. Nearby nobles whisper, realizing she isn't just a merchant's daughter. A maid nervously asks the emperor to see what the visitors have brought. Christy presents 2 bottles, explaining they are her products. The men show little interest, but the empress consort, ladies-in-waiting, and maids watch attentively. She asks permission to touch Emma's hair, which the emperor grants. Emma smiles as Christy gently touches her hair, revealing the skin lotion and conditioner she uses. The empress consort marvels at Emma's smooth, silky hair, admitting she's never seen such before. Christy invites her to try the lotion, noting only women would understand its value. A man urgently warns the emperor that something is dangerous, but the empress consort sharply cuts him off, telling Count Roland she is speaking to Lady Christy and never asked for his opinion. The crowd growls in displeasure. The empress consort smiles slyly, teasing if Christy intends to win over every woman in the castle as she demonstrates the lotion's benefits on her hand, praising it for dry skin. Christy beams with pride, calling the gift wonderful and one of the finest she has ever received. She humbly accepts the praise, while the Empress Consort's gaze sharpens in thought. Surrounded by attentive maids, the Empress Consort declares the skin lotion and conditioner truly wonderful, then provocatively wonders if Christy would consider selling the recipe and production rights to the Magnolia Empire. Christy looks shocked and confused by the unexpected proposal. Marquis Raynor calmly explains that he was involved in the product's development, so Christy cannot decide alone. Christy, startled, is told the decision is up to her. As the Marquis is a subject of the Empire and cannot refuse, she is addressed once more as Lady Christy, her heart pounding with the weight of the choice. The young woman urgently calls for help, glaring at Marquis Raynor with frustration and shouting that he is useless. The boy, Rid, apologizes for the plan's failure with a bright smile. He explains their company has invested everything into these products and warns that if their authority is abused to steal from them, they will leave the land and cease trading. He adds that any new product development rights would be feared to be taken by the capital, ending their business. The Empress Consort Matilda calmly interrupts, stating instead they will grant Her Majesty the right of first access. She promises to ensure the supply never runs out and humbly asks for leniency. Her expression is composed but firm as she makes this offer. The Empress Consort accepts the proposal with a graceful smile, acknowledging it is a pity but she shall accept. She emphasizes that Lady Christy's words are undoubtedly true and urges reconsideration of the concept of rights. She warns that forcibly robbing creators would drive merchants away from the capital, causing the empire's decline. The Emperor Arwen Magnolia agrees to be more prudent with rights moving forward, confirming that production rights for the skin lotion and conditioner will belong to the Christie Company and the Baldia territory. The assembled nobles bow deeply in agreement. Lady Christy watches the Empress Consort with surprise, noticing how smoothly the discussion suddenly proceeded. The young elf's sharp gaze fixes on the man beside her, who suddenly looks uneasy and tense. A sudden realization dawns on her, her eyes wide with shock as she thinks, "Wait, does this mean?" The scene shifts to reveal the smiling faces of the Empress Consort and Baron Martin Saffron. Their expressions confident and composed, the young elf's thoughts echo in disbelief. This was all planned from the start? As the man beside her breaks into a worried sweat. From a grand vantage point, the vast audience hall is shown, filled with nobles. The narration reflects on Her Majesty's satisfied demeanor, concluding she never sought the recipe or production rights but only wanted the skin lotion and conditioner for personal use. The young elf, now contemplative and distressed, admits she has been played and feels like a powerless pawn. The Empress Consort's strategy is revealed. She avoided direct orders to prevent abuse of authority and set a bad example, instead making the young elf promise the arrangement herself. The sound of the Empress Consort's pride crumbling fills the air. Exhausted, the young elf leans forward heavily on a couch, her breath heavy. Beside her, a maid with cat ears smiles nervously. The maid praises her, saying she did a very good job. The young elf looks weary but touched. Suddenly, the maid announces that His Imperial Majesty and Her Imperial Majesty have arrived, startling both women. The young elf's expression shifts to alertness. The Emperor Arwen Magnolia and Empress Consort Matilda enter the room with composed grace, accompanied by attendants. The Emperor apologizes for intruding while the young elf is resting and for not introducing himself properly earlier. He addresses Lady Christy directly, expressing regret for involving her in their schemes that day. The narration confirms they explained the situation to her, setting the stage for the next developments. Rumors about the large orders from the capital are spreading, drawing attention to the value of goods from Baldia. Nobles seeking profit have raised the issue of exclusive rights to keep those nobles in check. The young elf reassures Her Majesty, grateful it all worked out in the end. Since Christy now holds official production rights, nobles won't easily interfere with her. A nobleman, clearly agitated, prepares to discuss matters with Marquis Raynor, while a maid sets documents on a table, signaling the start of their discussion. The Empress Matilda eagerly addresses the first delivery rights, surprising those around her with her energy. A nobleman questions the situation, revealing that a certain country has requested to marry into the imperial family or an equivalent noble family, but this presents a problem. The focus shifts to a young man named Raynor, who is told that he is the only son without a suitable fiancée, highlighting the urgency and pressure surrounding his marriage prospects. Exhausted, the boy yawns and drifts into sleep, dreaming of his past self. He calls out to his mother in a garden, excitedly showing her a butterfly he caught. His mother smiles warmly, thanking him for the beautiful butterfly but advises him to let it go. She explains that butterflies are living creatures like them and would suffer in a tiny cage. The boy questions what she means by die. She patiently explains that losing life means disappearing forever. The boy, tearful, asks if that means his mother would be gone forever if she died. She reassures him with a gentle smile that she will always be with him. The boy promises to remember this, feeling nostalgic as he walks away. Suddenly, a girl named May calls out to him, startling him as she grabs his arm. May excitedly shows a little bird he caught in the garden. Beaming with pride, the boy marvels at the tiny creature, asking if it's still a baby. While May eagerly agrees, she then asks her brother if she can keep it. The boy reflects that she shares the same hair color as their mother and the same eyes as him. Noting how much she resembles both of them, he believes their mother will understand. They discuss the bird, agreeing it is cute but wonder if they should return it to its parents, who might be searching for it. The boy compares the bird's struggle to stay alive to their own, smiling warmly as May asks what it means to be alive. Holding hands, the boy begins to explain under the bright sun and open sky, starting with, "Well, you see." As they walk together, the girl clutching the little bird. Every day, it feels like something is slowly leaking out of her, like water dripping from a crack at the bottom of a glass. The disease crept in without any initial symptoms. At first, she felt sluggish, but soon she could no longer stand on her own. She wonders if there's anything she can do about her frail body as she clutches her chest in bed, silent and weary. Since then, she's done her best to stay aware of that feeling from the moment she wakes up until she falls asleep. Though mornings remain the worst, if she concentrates, the sense of losing something fades a little. She reflects on how her children suffered. Mel was restless and cried constantly, while Rid lashed out, treating others poorly after learning of her impending death. She questions why this accursed disease had to gnaw at her children, sinking into despair. But recently, Rid has changed. He's calmer now, and talking to him almost feels like speaking to an adult. She notices Mel's happiness and asks if something good happened. Mel beams, asking her brother to read her a book. Rid had once lost control, but now he's picked himself up and started guiding their family in a better direction. She resolves there's no way she can give up now. Determined, she vows not to let the disease beat her. With a firm grip on her chest, she declares she will beat this illness. Her resolve shines brightly as she urges herself to live on, nunnally. The boy wakes slowly under the warm sun, shielding his eyes as he smiles softly at the pleasant weather. He admits he dozed off because it was just so warm and comfortable. Determined, he reminds himself that his father and Chris are working hard, so he must pull himself together too. He decides today is the day to try using his attributes like in the game, listing elements like fire, water, ice, lightning, wind, wood, earth, light, darkness, and none. Reflecting, he notes this world is very similar to Tokarela. A game from his past life. He needed money, so he ended up making cosmetics presented to the Imperial family. Something that never happened in the game. He finds this motivating and believes new paths might open if he lives his own life here. Confident, he decides this area should be fine and plans to check out the rest of the attributes in order. Having already confirmed fire. Testing his powers, he summons a massive crystalline formation, amazed that he can really use all the attributes. The boy approaches the glowing crystals with awe, confirming his abilities work beyond just fire. He resolves to name each spell after its attribute, starting with Flame Spear and Lightning Spear. Preparing for any sudden attack, he readies his magic with calm focus, ready to defend himself if needed. The boy shouts the command Flame Spear as he conjures a blazing spear of fire, launching it forward with fierce determination. The fiery spear slices through the air, leaving a trail of flames and shattering the ground where it strikes. He smiles confidently, declaring that his demonstration should be enough for now. Suddenly, a girl with twin tails excitedly praises him, calling him Nichama, and marveling at the fire magic he produced. Surprised, he asks how long she has been watching. She cheerfully admits she saw everything, clearly impressed. The boy leans close to the girl, whispering a request to keep his magic a secret. She questions why. Since it looked so beautiful and cool, he promises to read her favorite picture book if she agrees. The girl beams with delight, but he worries that if everyone finds out about his magic, he will stand out too much. She eagerly asks him to show it again. A few days later, the boy reads a letter from Chris, who had gone to the capital. The letter reveals that Marquis Raynor set him up, banned Count Roland from doing business with him, and that Empress Matilda is acting irrationally. The boy realizes he is in danger but wonders what happened in the capital. As his lessons are about to start, a woman reminds him that to use an attribute, one needs an aptitude for it. A woman asks if special aptitude is necessary for casting special magic, but the boy shouts that he doesn't know. She praises him for admitting his ignorance, while he wonders if she's just flattering him. He questions if anyone can use special magic, and she starts to explain that the answer is no. The boy thinks that anyone might be too broad, but with enough practice, anyone should be able to produce or inherit special magic. His eyes light up with excitement at the thought of creating his own special magic. The boy recalls being taught that offensive magic requires a clear mental image, and he asks if the same applies to special magic. The woman confirms it does, adding that special magic demands a much clearer image and far more mana than offensive spells. She explains that both creating and inheriting special magic require a substantial amount of mana and imagination. Only the original creator can pass on special magic to someone else. Without enough mana and imagination, casting special magic is impossible. The woman shifts the topic to the moonlight grass the boy left with her. Revealing it has mana restorative properties, she wonders how to extract and concentrate it, asking what the final product will look like and if it will be a drink or injection. The boy is surprised by her enthusiasm. She suddenly apologizes, saying she must leave to start working on prototypes and urges the boy to continue self-study. He protests about their lessons, but she rushes off determined. The boy walks outside under a stormy sky, pondering if he can create original spells as long as he has enough mana. He wonders how to measure how much mana he possesses and considers that there might be a measuring spell or tool for it. Suddenly, lightning flashes nearby, catching his attention and startling him. The boy notices the heavy rain pouring down and realizes he must hurry home. He rushes through the rain, splashing water as he runs. Upon entering, a maid gasps in concern, warning he'll catch a cold and urgently calls for a bath to be prepared and a towel brought immediately. Despite his protests that a simple change of clothes will suffice, the maids insist he needs to be warmed up properly, recalling his trauma from the garden collapse. They gently guide him away as the scene shifts to a steaming bath waiting for him. Relaxing in the bath, the boy sighs contentedly, remarking how good it feels since it's been ages since he had a proper bath. He marvels at how the bath was carried right into his room, noting that in this world people usually just wipe themselves down with a warm cloth, making a real bath a luxury. Curious about the bath's expense, he wonders how much hot water it uses, realizing the units of measurement here, grams, liters, meters, millimeters, are the same as in his old world. An idea sparks in his mind. Excited, he declares that he might have found a way to measure mana or magic using these familiar units. The boy walks alone beneath a street lamp, then accepts a cup from a man inside a grand stone building. He studies the cup carefully, then places it on a tree stump outside. With a confident smile, he spreads his hands wide and declares, "Here I go." He begins filling the cup with water using his magic. Noting it holds exactly 1 liter, he plans to fill and empty it repeatedly, tossing it away once full. Repeating the process over and over, he names the spell 1 liter. Proud of his precision, he announces he's gotten good at filling the cup exactly and will now repeat the process 10 more times. Concentrating, he methodically repeats the spell dozens and then hundreds of times, pushing himself until he feels nearly drained of mana. Focusing intently, he conjures water swirling around his hands, commanding himself to focus as the magical water flows and splashes with increasing intensity. The boy exhales with relief, marking the 980th time he's cast the spell. He realizes the sensation of losing mana remains constant each time. If the mana cost for 1 liter is set to 1 unit, then the amount consumed per spell is fixed, meaning he has at least 980 mana. Excited, he declares he can now create his own special magic, mana measurement, which displays a numerical value representing the mana one has and the mana of others in one's line of sight. He decides to test mana measurement immediately, hearing a voice in his head announcing his personal mana as 80. Though nothing seems to happen visually, he resolves to try again. This time, the spell succeeds and he hears the voice again, noting his personal mana has dropped from 80 to 60. He deduces the spell consumes 20 mana. Confident, he thinks mana measurement will be useful, especially once they give their mother the mana restorative, allowing him to verify its effects. Under the moonlit sky, the boy walks forward holding the cup, feeling he has taken another step forward in his magical journey. The woman, startled and holding a bottle, asks him to repeat himself. The boy nervously explains he created a special magic called mana measurement, because he was curious about how much mana a spell consumes. She reacts with disbelief, questioning how he could come up with such an idea, calling his thinking far from common sense. The boy details how he based the magic on measuring water, first creating a spell that releases exactly 1 liter of magic, then using that as a basis for measuring mana points. She admits she never thought of such an idea and notes his aptitude for water magic. She warns him never to speak of the spell to anyone, explaining that if people found out, he'd be forced to work in the capital. The boy protests, asking why, and she explains that anyone with an aptitude for water magic should have thought of it. She sits him down to explain how magic works for ordinary people. Barely any commoners can produce mana, and most don't even know the theory behind it. Only magic researchers can produce mana, and those who control it well are either geniuses or extremely hard workers. The boy listens intently, beginning to understand. The narration reveals that magic is not essential for daily life in this world and is only used in select fields. The boy reflects that he found it strange no one in the mansion used magic, but realizes it's because they can't use magic, not because they choose not to. He hadn't expected magic to be so rare in this fantasy world and feels it is a waste. She explains that even if she tried to create a spell to produce exactly 1 liter of water, she couldn't because she lacks the water attribute, which is frustrating. The boy, sitting nervously, is told he's a mold-breaking prodigy and asked if he realizes it now. He quietly agrees. He wonders why Rid, who is even better at mana conversion, isn't forced to work in the capital. The woman with glasses smiles warmly and confirms she was chosen as a director of a research lab in the capital. The boy acknowledges this with a quiet, "That's right," while she beams with pride. She cheerfully admits she was immediately ousted due to jealousy but insists she's still a genius summoned to the capital. She playfully tells the boy she will always stay by his side and watch over him. Excited to teach him because she knew he would show her something amazing, the boy wonders if she just called him a research subject. With a confident pose, she declares that society will push anyone who stands out into their place. But if you stand out too much, no one can stop you. She urges breaking every rule of common sense. The boy nervously agrees to keep their secret. Admitting she should have told him sooner, she laughs, saying it's easy to read his thoughts, while he reacts with shock at her boldness. They continue working on the mana restorative, starting by testing different forms of moonlit grass. Raw, boiled, and dried, the woman presents the test products with a smile. The boy, grimacing, steels himself to try them despite the grass's bitterness, determined to do it for his mother. Tears welling, he resolves to carry out the experiment. After tasting all the samples, he reflects on what he learned, standing beside the woman in the lab. The boy reports that eating the raw grass is unbearably bitter and hard to swallow, recovering 20 mana. Boiled grass is even worse, with less effect and an unpleasant taste, recovering between 10 and 30 mana. The dried powder form is easiest to swallow, with the highest mana recovery of 50, though it still tastes bad. The woman suggests the effect might vary depending on how he takes it and proposes chewing and rolling it in his mouth immediately. The boy glares, calling her a demon for the suggestion. She praises his effort, assuring that the powdered form should be safe even for Nunnally. He covers his mouth, overwhelmed by the awful taste, but she looks on encouragingly as he prepares for the next step. The boy clenches his fist, tears in his eyes, declaring they have finally completed the mana potion. Beside him, the woman smiles knowingly. She eagerly presses him with questions about the potion's taste, teasing him with affection and playful pressure. He feels the weight of her excitement as she clearly enjoyed the process. The boy, blushing, admits he'll never forget what she's done for him or what it's done to him. When asked to reveal more, he dodges, but the woman hints that Melody-sama might share the secret if asked, despite her teasing. He senses trouble brewing and feels uneasy about what's coming. Arriving home, the boy calls out cheerfully. A young girl with twin tails and 2 maids greet him warmly, calling him Nichana and welcoming him back. He notices her hesitant glance but smiles brightly, happy to be home. Suddenly, the girl recoils, covering her nose and crying out that he stinks badly. The boy is shocked as everyone around him begins to avoid him. One maid defends him, insisting he doesn't smell bad, but the boy feels isolated, realizing everyone is keeping their distance from him. A man with glasses awkwardly apologizes to Rid, explaining that his clothes have an intense smell and asks him to wash. Rid cheerfully agrees to do so immediately. The night sky looms over the grand building as a loud call for Sandra echoes. Outside, a group of soldiers energetically perform synchronized calisthenics, counting aloud in unison. Inside, Rid watches from a window, noting how the radio calisthenics he started have spread widely. Despite this, he still feels a bit bad about the situation. Narration reveals Rubens is a promising young knight with reflexes rivaling Rid's. Rid watches him from above, calling out that he's falling behind. Rubens, thinking during their lesson, realized the importance of calisthenics before starting the fastest exercises, though he didn't expect it to grow so large. During training, Rubens scolds Rid for losing focus, warning that in a real battle he'd be dead. He explains that Rid has dungeon training first, as the Knight's Order often clears dungeons. Rid, excited, asks for more details about dungeon training. A soldier explains that dungeons are considered a kind of creature. Tokarella is filled with difficult dungeons where materials can be gathered, characters trained, or hidden bosses fought. Dungeons form when underground cores absorb vast amounts of mana over time, creating an entrance to the outside. At the same time, monsters and treasures are produced. Surface creatures are lured by treasure but are killed by the monsters inside, which feed on them. Leaving a dungeon alone causes monsters to multiply and eventually roam freely, so the Knight's Order and Adventurer Guilds eliminate them. Destroying the dungeon's core is necessary but risky, as it can cause collapse and burial. Often, Only wounding the core keeps the dungeon manageable. The Knight's Order regularly patrols to check for dungeons. May compares the dungeon's core to a queen ant and the monsters to worker ants. May asks what an adventurer is, excited by the word. The soldier explains there are public and private guilds. The Magnolia Empire's guild is public, suited for adventurers seeking a laid-back life. The Adventurers Guild mostly handles gathering quests, while the Knight's Order deals with monsters and dungeons. Adventurers accept quests from all over their territory, with more difficult quests offering higher rewards. Joining grants a guild card. The system has been this way for ages. He expresses a desire to register someday. The soldier promises to help him develop top-notch sword skills, revealing dungeon clearing is one of his specialties. Then, he suddenly urges May to marry Diana before that future arrives, causing May to react with shock. May nervously asks to avoid the topic of marriage, blushing as he recalls Diana always waking him up but warning she won't always be there because she'll get married someday. He struggles with confidence, doubting Diana's feelings despite encouragement that she definitely likes him. He explains Diana makes lunchboxes for him as practice for when she gets a husband, but she insists Rubens is just a friend and their relationship isn't romantic. May insists there's no way she likes him, growing more flustered. He feeling sorry for Diana, questions what he's hearing. He recalls a childhood promise to protect her as a knight and wonders if he and Diana share special memories. The urging voice commands him to confess to Diana, emphasizing he absolutely must do it. He protests, overwhelmed and embarrassed, but the voice insists he should know Diana best and think about what she really means when she says those things. May's expression softens as he contemplates what Diana truly thinks. May, blushing and hesitant, agrees quietly, while the younger boy smiles confidently, saying May seems to have an idea and will be fine. May reflects that they would never move on unless he pushed them. At a dining table, the boy laughs softly, prompting a curious girl to ask what he's laughing about. He brushes it off, promising not to tell anyone yet. The scene shifts to a nostalgic town street where a girl with long hair fondly recalls how they used to play there all the time. May, still blushing and nervous, asks what she wanted to talk about. He calls her name, Diana, struggling to find the words. A memory unfolds by a fountain where a young couple holds hands, with narration explaining they started dating after a certain point. The boy watching from a window comments that they should have just jumped straight to marriage, smiling to himself as petals fall around him. Birds chirp outside as May sleeps peacefully, until a cheerful girl bursts in, shouting a lively good morning and tackling him with a big hug. May stammers a shy greeting back, blushing but smiling. May reflects on how Mel has been waking him up every morning, though she's far too forceful about it. He recalls trying to get up earlier than her, but she sulks whenever he does. After breakfast, Mel diligently studies, learning reading, manners, language, and dancing. May understands that despite her strictness, she's still a child who just wants to play and values morning closeness with her older brother. A man announces their return, greeting Father and Chris. The man happily accepts May's morning body slam and declares their arrival. Chris, trembling and tearful, quietly tells May she did her best to endure. Concerned, May rushes to Chris's side, asking if she's all right. The man explains that the Empress took a liking to Chris and they spent the trip talking business, leaving her little rest. He instructs May to let Chris rest in the guest room and asks her to come to his office after. May thanks him for his hard work as the man leaves, while Chris remains weak but comforted. A man fixes his intense gaze on May, who looks back with a puzzled expression. The man breaks the silence, asking how Rid could have changed so much. May admits he didn't expect his father to pry so deeply but has thought a lot about how to respond. The man notes he's applied pressure, yet May remains calm. Something no child could manage, he challenges May to explain how he learned to make offerings to the imperial couple. Since no books in the mansion would teach that, May acknowledges it would be hard to keep fooling his father forever. He winces, realizing he must choose his words carefully, especially about recalling his previous life after collapsing in the garden. He reflects that his memories are a mix of Rid's and his old life, creating a new person distinct from both. He confesses he told the man he felt guilty for how coldly Rid treated his little sister and the maids. He also shared how much he respected Rid and wanted to become stronger. Most importantly, May's thoughts linger on these feelings as the scene fades with butterflies fluttering around flowers. May recalls the despair he felt, powerless as his mother was dying, determined. He vows to protect his mother and family no matter what. In a quiet, empty room, May nervously looks toward a seated man, whispering his name, Rid. The man apologizes, confessing he never realized how much despair May endured or tried to understand his feelings. May, shocked, pleads with him not to apologize. The man admits he is a failure as a father and should have faced May properly. May, tearful, calls him father and explains he trained Rid using knowledge from a dreamlike experience in his previous world. He wonders if the man believes him and reveals he thought he should tell him about Tokarela, though this world lacks anything like game consoles. May reveals he created a mana potion, surprising the man with disbelief. He explains he procured the ingredient, moonlight grass, and had Sandra complete the production. He also developed special magic to measure mana and confirm the potion's effects. May admits he helped Sandra, expecting her excellence to pay off, but never imagined it would be this. The man acknowledges the mana potion will raise Nunnally's grade to C-, but stresses it's only a stopgap measure and the cure still needs to be made. May offers to help in any way he can, recalling the man's earlier explanation that his knowledge comes from an imitated experience of this world. The man calls for Garn to join the conversation, telling May there's more to discuss. The man informs May that his marriage has been decided. Shocking him, May anxiously asks if it means a proposal or marriage interview, but the man clarifies it is a marriage. When May asks when, the man says it will be in a few months at the earliest. The man explains the marriage is a political alliance to strengthen relations with the Rinarut kingdom, and their princess will move to Baldia. May is stunned to learn the princess is the same age as him. Struggling to believe such young children are being married, the man instructs Garn to prepare the mansion properly to house a princess and asks permission to say something more. The man explains their mansion is too small to host a foreign princess, and since the cultures of Rinarut and Magnolia differ greatly, building a separate residence would be better. May questions why a princess would marry someone of his rank. Noting the Baldias are a marquee family and their statuses differ significantly, the man instructs to prepare another building, promising to cover the construction costs, and the servant agrees respectfully. The man warns May not to leave the room as he begins explaining the Rinarut kingdom, ruled by dark elves. A map shows Rinarut bordered by Baldia and Bulst kingdoms, both human-ruled. Long ago, the Bulst incident occurred between Rinarut and Bulst, leading to slave hunts in Rinarut and strained relations between the countries. Rinarut depended on salt exports and couldn't afford sanctions from Bulst, placing them in a critical situation. Rinarut sought help from Magnolia but only on strict conditions. They had to accept all Magnolia's terms, becoming a vassal state despite the alliance's public appearance. Rinarut retained self-governance but had to report to Magnolia on national matters. Bulst outlawed the dark elf slave trade, and all enslaved dark elves were freed. The man reveals the marriage is a political move to strengthen relations, requiring a bride from either the imperial family or an equivalent noble family. May realizes the princess is from a vassal state and forced to marry into a marquee family like his. Though May feels sorry for the princess, the man reminds him there is no avoiding this marriage, as May is a noble close in age to the imperial heir, making him the chosen match. He is told that if he believes that way, he must love her enough to make up for everything. Whether he can make the princess with a troubled fate happy will depend entirely on him. The man commands him to protect the princess, and the boy solemnly agrees. When asked the princess's name, the man reveals she is the first princess of Rinarut, named Farah Rinarut Sama. The boy repeats her name quietly, absorbing the weight of the revelation. The boy reflects that he told his father he wanted to be involved in building a separate residence and visit Rinarut, even if only briefly. The man explains that the marriage has yet to be publicly announced but that he will inform Rinarut they are sending him as a prospective marriage candidate. The boy admits he cannot share all the details, hinting it relates to his memories and his mother's illness. The man sighs, accepting the arrangement for a short visit. The boy reflects in disbelief that he is to be married at 6 years old. An older man calls him Ridsama and then Garn, confirming that the young madam will indeed be his wife. He encourages the boy, confident he can make the princess of Rinarut happy, and assures that the servants will support him. The boy brightens, feeling cheered and determined to do his best. The boy admits they are still just kids and wonders if calling his future wife madam is too much. The older man laughs softly and apologizes for his rudeness, while the boy smiles confidently, telling him not to worry about it. The chapter begins with a boy standing before a closed door, calling out softly, wondering if Chris might be asleep. He knocks gently, and then opens the door slightly, curiosity sparking in his eyes as he calls her name again, stepping quietly inside. Inside, Chris lies asleep in bed, her long hair spread across the pillow. The boy is struck by her peaceful beauty and thinks she must have been exhausted. He sits nearby, admiring her delicate features as she murmurs softly in her sleep. Suddenly, Chris stirs, murmuring a distressed plea. "No, don't, Your Imperial Majesty." The boy's eyes widen in surprise, wondering what kind of dream she is having. He hesitates, feeling conflicted about listening in. The boy tries to open another door but finds it locked, questioning if someone is on the other side. A voice from behind the door warns him playfully that trying to open it is no good, calling him Nichama. Shocked, the boy recognizes the voice and calls out, "Mel!" A girl with twin tails blocks the doorway, scolding the boy for entering a woman's room without permission. The boy nervously explains he just wanted to check on Chris, She teasingly asks if he really wants the door open now. Pleading with Mel, the boy hesitates, wondering if he should open it before Chris wakes up, apologizing quietly. Inside, Chris admits she was so tired she fell asleep. Embarrassed she did so in such a place. The boy reassures her not to worry. Relieved she wasn't exposed, Chris apologizes for making him go to the capital, confused because her father never explained what happened. The boy begins to recount what Chris told him about the capital. Her dealings with Count Roland, the charade others kept from her, and the endless business talks with the Empress. The narration shifts to the day after the audience, when the Emperor ordered Count Roland to pay reparations for insulting a foreign noble without knowing her status. Chris rejected the reparations, which brought shame upon Count Roland again. Chris then made a request during the audience, asking the Emperor if he wished for anything else. The Emperor and Empress sit silently, awaiting her words. Chris addresses the gathered nobles, urging everyone to stop believing rumors and only share verified information. She warns that falsehoods would disgrace the glorious Magnolia Empire on the international stage. A shocked man with a mustache reacts strongly, but Chris insists they should use this moment to reflect and learn from their mistakes. The man apologizes for his subordinate's lack of proper education and offers a formal apology on behalf of everyone present. Chris reflects that she might have overstepped her position by addressing such a large crowd. Realizing the issue became bigger than she expected. Chris is told that Count Roland's faction is losing influence due to the incident, and they doubt the faction can act soon. She is called a true heroine. Though she tries to brush it off, she acknowledges Roland is a formidable opponent skilled in commerce, shady deals, and acquiring rights, making him a threat if they expand their business. Chris expresses gratitude for the successful business talks and thanks Rid-sama for the blessing of coming to Baldia territory. She admits that despite her hard work, many of her efforts went unrecognized and she was never truly accepted. She feels lucky to have met Rid-sama. The narration explains that when Count Roland insulted Chris as a shrew who left the Saffron Company, it referred to her motives for starting the Christie Company. Chris was born into the company with an older brother who was supposed to inherit it, but her talent in business surpassed his. Although the Saffron Company operated behind the scenes, rumors began to spread. As rumors grew louder, Chris feared her family company would split, so she chose independence. To avoid competing with her family, she launched a new company in Baldia, where no elven trading firm existed. Despite her talent, starting fresh in a foreign land proved tough, and time passed without notable success. Then, unexpectedly, someone arrived, though talent alone often fails to bring results. This arrival marked a turning point. The visitor reflects that Chris's persistence and hard work in Baldia finally attracted fortune's favor. He explains that his butler told him about the Christie Company because of her efforts there. He worries his words might not reach her, disliking how she belittles herself. He encourages her, saying she's the one who made it this far and should have confidence. Chris is moved and surprised by the praise, struggling to believe she deserves such recognition from Rid-sama. She reflects on the relentless effort and hardships she has endured, admitting she's been working like a madman. Tears well up as she realizes how much being praised means to her. Maybe because she's always wanted acknowledgement. Overwhelmed, she quietly thanks them with a trembling voice. Apologizing for losing composure, she is reassured not to worry. She asks to hear about the Empress's priority rights next. Confidently, she explains the conditions. Stocking a full month's worth of goods first, selling only after fulfilling the priority order, and full payment in advance. Despite concerns about just starting aloe cultivation, she smiles, saying she's already handled it. She reveals swift action, requesting wild aloe from adventurer guilds, activating supply channels of both the Christie and Saffron companies, and signing contracts with farmers in aloe-growing regions. The market price will soon spike, so now is the time to act. The other woman acknowledges this but believes they'll be busy fulfilling the Empress's orders for now. She urges Chris to secure enough product for herself after the Empress, as their poster girl. The conversation turns playful as she tells Rid-sama to choose words carefully, then boldly declares there's barely anyone as beautiful as Chris, so everyone would want her. Chris blushes and protests, but Rid-sama insists she's beautiful and their product only enhances that. Sure, everyone will adore her. Flustered, Chris begs for them to stop, overwhelmed by the praise. They continue discussing and decide to name their products Skin Lotion Christie and Conditioner Christie Emma. The elf is surprised they named the products after them and apologizes. She explains the skin lotion will have many variations by changing ingredients or adding perfume, making it worth developing. May nods, understanding the gist. He learns he can now negotiate directly with the Empress and offers to be a contact for Rid-sama. May reflects nervously that Empress Matilda is crazy and that he's in danger, while the Empress smiles confidently. He admits he'd rather stay far from anyone who can make him whimper in his sleep. The elf asks how he knows what he whimpers about, and May cheerfully explains he waits and listens while she sleeps. He reacts with surprise and realization. Suddenly, the elf lashes out furiously, accusing May of sneaking a peek at a woman while she was sleeping and calls him scum, her anger erupting explosively. A maid enters carrying a tray with black tea, greeting Mel warmly. Mel, caught in swirling ribbons, apologizes nervously, saying he only wanted to tease a little. The elf demands Mel explain it was all a coincidence, hinting at something he saw while she was asleep. Mel looks uneasy, clutching a stuffed rabbit silently. The girl holding the rabbit accuses Mel of staring at the elf for ages, denying it was a coincidence. The elf and maid appear as small chibi spirits, scolding Mel. The scene shifts to a single water droplet falling, rippling in a pool beneath a rainy sky. Inside a dimly lit room, a woman coughs, clutching her injured hand. She struggles to calm her pounding heart and focus on the sensation of water droplets. Tears stream down her face as she steels herself, vowing never to give in. Sitting upright in bed, the woman clenches her hands to her chest, declaring with determination that she will definitely stand on her own 2 feet again someday. A woman lies in bed, coughing harshly and struggling to catch her breath. She forces herself to stay quiet, telling herself that's enough. When someone knocks, she tells them to come in, opening the door herself. 3 visitors enter the room, one politely excusing themselves. The woman introduces herself as Nunnally Baldia, wife of Marquis Raynor, and apologizes for her lack of decorum. The visitors stand before her bedside, listening attentively. One visitor, Sandra Ernest, introduces herself as a magic researcher. The young boy among them reflects in surprise at his mother's dignified demeanor. The man apologizes for not being brave enough to tell her the truth, revealing he has been hiding the disease she suffers from. The man solemnly explains the disease is an incurable and fatal condition called mana deficiency. The woman listens with a serious, pensive expression as the gravity of the diagnosis settles in. The woman calmly admits she already knows the truth. The man demands to know who told her, shocked and sweating. She gently tells him nobody should be angry, insisting she knows her own body best. Even without the disease's name, she sensed it was fatal. She reflects that she has finally learned the disease's name. Mana deficiency, the boy, tearful, realizes their mother has accepted her fate. She apologizes to Rid, acknowledging how hard this has been on him. Despite her illness, she calls herself a failure for worrying her child. The man sharply denies she is a failure as a mother, blaming himself as a failure as a father. The boy scolds his father for being too stiff, especially about family matters, while the woman playfully encourages calling her Mel despite her protests. The man tells Rid to stop the bickering, while the woman calls out to them all as mother too. The boy angrily asks if the man understands how lonely and helpless their mother must have felt. He admits he avoided facing the truth, burying himself in work and too afraid to tell her. The woman lies alone in bed, isolated by her fatal disease, while the man listens with a troubled expression. He kneels beside her bed, confessing he has committed a grave error and pleading for forgiveness. While the boy watches silently, she smiles gently, telling him not to worry or feel burdened. Their eyes meet, and they exchange heartfelt declarations of love. The door opens suddenly, and a woman with glasses enters, carrying a box. The man embraces the woman in bed protectively. The visitor urges Nunnally to take a mana potion, explaining it won't heal her but should lessen her symptoms. Nunnally hesitates, coughing and grimacing at the potion's taste, advised to swallow it with water. Concerned, the boy asks if their mother is all right. Noticing her pale appearance, she struggles to speak before suddenly collapsing in pain. Everyone rushes to her side as she gasps and wheezes, her condition worsening rapidly. The boy shouts that this is bad and demands a mana measurement immediately. The mana reading reveals Nunnally has only 8 mana left, shocking the boy. He urgently calls for Sandra to hurry with the medicine, holding out the potion to Nunnally as she writhes in agony, clutching her chest. The woman gasps for breath, struggling desperately as she clamps her mouth shut. The boy shouts for her to open her mouth, calling out to Nunnally-sama. He pleads urgently, refusing to let his mother give in. Her breathing falters, and the boy cries out her name in anguish. Tears stream down his face as he screams for his mother, overwhelmed by helplessness. Suddenly, the woman collapses backward with a heavy thud. The boy's eyes widen in shock, his voice breaking as he cries out again. The boy rushes forward, catching her in a protective embrace. His tears fall as he holds her tightly, his heart breaking at her fragile state. When he first met Nunnally, he was working as Arwen's aide, eager to climb the ranks in the capital. Disguised for their inspection, he questions the need to go into town, but Arwen insists one is checking on affairs while the other searches for a present for his wife. Arwen refuses to send a subordinate or summon a merchant, saying it wouldn't mean as much if he didn't pick the present himself. He reveals his father's health is failing and he doubts his father will handle government affairs again. He expects to inherit the crown soon and won't have many chances to visit town like this. Before all that, he wants to burn what he must protect into his eyes, grateful. He thanks Arwen for coming with him into town today, insisting it's his problem and Arwen shouldn't worry. A man with glasses smiles faintly as another man demands to be let go. Shouting for release, the man in the chair asks if he can leave. Receiving a warning not to overdo it, the man with glasses commands a guard named Dinas to keep Arwen safe as they hurry away. In a shadowed alley, a woman angrily pulls away from a man who smirks, suggesting they continue their previous conversation. She declares she has officially rejected him and refuses to speak with such an arrogant, selfish man. The man and his companions grin maliciously, causing the woman's eyes to widen in fear. He mocks her embarrassment and warns that a carriage will arrive soon to pick them up, promising to make her feel the same shame. She silently pleads for help, trembling. The man sternly questions what the woman is doing there, then claims she is his lover and that they are having a private rendezvous. From a distance, a figure calls out to the woman, urging her to tell the truth, addressing her as "my lady." The woman screams for help, fiercely denying that any of the men harassing her are her lover. A man with glasses calmly promises to protect her if anyone bothers her, then snaps his fingers with a confident smile. The man with glasses dismisses the fallen attackers coldly, telling them he has nothing to do with them and ordering them to leave. A young man boldly declares himself as Logas from the Galliano family, warning the man to remember his name as he retreats. The woman, tearful and relieved, thanks the man with glasses for saving her, admitting she feared no one would come even if she screamed. Others call out to the man with glasses as he comforts her gently. The woman looks on with a warm smile as the man with glasses quietly tells Dinas not to shout his name so loudly, reminding him they are undercover. She thinks to herself what a wonderful person he is. A few months later, a man reacts with surprise to the news of a marriage proposal for him. He denies knowing anything about it, but the other person insists it was recommended by Matilda and his parents. The man reveals a letter of approval, recognizing it as definitely written by his father. He learns that his partner is the woman called the Crimson Lady, Nunnally Ron Amos, who has rejected all marriage proposals so far despite being quite a beauty. He admits he has never met or seen her before. The scene shifts to a grand estate under a calm sky. The man suddenly recognizes the woman before him and exclaims that she is the girl from before. She smiles warmly, pleased he remembers her, and comments she never expected to meet again. He takes a closer look and thinks to himself how beautiful she really is. Sitting together, the man awkwardly admits he is overwhelmed by the name, the Crimson Lady Justice. The woman looks confused and asks what he means. He quickly clarifies he was referring to her beautiful crimson hair and meant to say she is an enchanting woman, causing her to react with surprise. The woman suddenly interrupts, nervously explaining that when she rejected another man's proposal, he claimed it was because of her harsh criticism. Since then, rumors have spread, labeling her the Crimson Lady. The man looks surprised, admitting he never knew such a thing had happened. She smiles warmly, calling the phrase the Crimson Lady wonderful and admits she didn't realize he meant it so beautifully. Seated across from each other in an elegant room, he confesses he is quite smitten with her. He formally proposes she come to the Baldia territory as his wife. She blushes but responds with a gentle smile, agreeing gladly if he truly wishes it. Meanwhile, a young boy anxiously watches as the woman swallows medicine. He urgently commands Ridsama to use mana measurement, hoping the medicine will work as he pleads silently for success. The mana measurement reveals Nunnally's mana at 101, causing a mix of relief and tears among those gathered. Their eyes widen in shock and hope as they look at the frail woman lying in bed. Joy bursts forth as the young boy exclaims they succeeded, while the woman weakly murmurs, calling out to her child. The long-haired man watches silently, eyes opening slowly, as the boy urgently calls to his mother and Nunnally-sama. The woman gasps for breath, smiling faintly as she declares she feels fine now. The boy cries out in overwhelming emotion, tears streaming down his face as he calls for his mother. The woman's smile reassures him, while he stands trembling beside her. The narration explains how a doctor examined the mother after her sudden fit, and the four of them agreed to a regimen of mana potions thrice daily. With maids stationed in her room for care, the boy reflects on the potion's remarkable effect, restoring 100 mana with one dose, crediting Rainer-sama for the recovery. Sandra explains how Rainer quickly judged that Nunnally-sama could no longer take the medicine by herself, so he chewed the medicine and mixed it with water in his mouth before delivering it mouth to mouth. She reflects on how amazing her father's quick judgment was. Then, She is asked if she has time now, noting it's already time to eat with family. The boy suggests giving the loving couple some privacy, as the group quietly stands near the bed where the woman rests. Under a moonlit sky, a tense conversation unfolds inside a traditional room. A woman questions the acceptance of a marriage proposal from a noble of equal status to the imperial family. Calling it a sign of disrespect, she doubts the visit's true purpose, especially given how close the suitor is in age to the princess. A stern man named Norris is told the visit will be allowed since they requested a marriage partner and cannot dismiss the chosen partner. He reluctantly agrees but worries about potential problems with the marquis involved. The final panels show a mysterious figure smiling ominously while Norris sweats nervously. A young woman confidently declares they must determine if the marquis' son is suitable for their princess. A stern man in a decorated uniform demands to know what she is plotting. The scene shifts to a dark-haired man with pointed ears, who smiles slyly and asks, "What if we did something like this?" A woman laughs softly, surprised that someone suggested giving the loving couple some privacy. She remarks that when she looks at the boy, it feels like only his body is young. The boy nervously denies such a silly idea. The woman, more serious now, says she has come up with a new special magic she wants them to create together. The boy reacts with shock and curiosity, asking what it is this time, as she holds up a mysterious key-like object. The boy reveals the magic is called memory magic, as he opens a large door, inviting the woman inside. The boy recalls something he read in his previous life. The brain never forgets anything and memories simply sleep deep within the subconscious. He wonders if this means the brain is not only part of the body but also part of the soul, since he reincarnated with his past life's memories. He asks if she knows of any spell to view the memories of a soul. The woman responds that it sounds like the life magic god path, explaining it is a scholarly way of thinking. The boy asks what the life magic god path is. She explains it is a small, little-known school of philosophy in this world, stitched together from the main words of a creed. The idea is that life force, the source of mana, is also a path connected to the gods. The boy considers this relevant to their current matter and asks the man, Ridsama, to explain further. The boy holds a mysterious key-like object close to his chest, feeling it as the closest thing to his soul. A woman suggests trying the opposite of mana conversion, but warns him not to overdo it, admitting she can't even imagine the outcome. The boy meditates, explaining his process, first squeezing his life force to create mana, then trying to direct that mana deep inside his body. Though nothing seems to happen, he decides to squeeze a little more, wondering where the new life force would go when mana turns back into life force. He suspects it might be where the soul resides. Suddenly, the boy notices mana being sucked away somewhere. His eyes wide with shock, he spots what looks like a hole pulling the mana out, and his expression turns grave as he realizes this might be very bad. The boy falls backward in surprise as the entire library around him begins to tilt and shift unnaturally, the shelves bending and warping, leaving him stunned and alarmed by the sudden, strange phenomenon. The boy wonders where he is, surrounded by countless floating bookshelves stretching endlessly in all directions. He realizes the space is filled only with bookshelves, and suddenly notices a figure approaching, greeting him with a simple "Hi there." Stunned, the boy questions who the figure is, shocked to see it resembles himself. The figure introduces itself as the personification of his memories, calling itself Memory. It guesses the boy came here to recall his past life and offers to cooperate. The boy expresses a desire to remember more clearly and wonders if searching the internet is possible here. Memory explains that while a web search is difficult, the boy can search through it instead. It offers to search the world's information for him but warns that normal people shouldn't be here. Though the boy was aware of it, Memory asks what to call him, suggesting mana, since the boy is skilled with it. Memory acknowledges the boy made it here easily but warns the place is delicate and dangerous. As it is inside his own soul, it firmly tells him never to come here again. The boy thanks Memory, who tells him to call whenever he needs something before disappearing with a cheerful "Siwaye." A woman with glasses stares intently, calling out, "Ridsama?" The boy, startled, asks where he is, overwhelmed by sudden screams that cause him to fall back in shock. The woman, Sandra, asks what's wrong, teasing him for acting innocent. She explains she checked on him because he was so quiet, but he apologizes for worrying her and assures he's fine, though he's still catching his breath. The boy contemplates whether to tell Sandra something, admitting he failed. He recalls Memory warning him that going to that place is dangerous and fears he might have been trapped there forever. He apologizes for not being helpful and asks Sandra not to worry, unsure if it would have worked anyway. Alone, the boy speaks to Memory inside his head. Relieved it worked, Memory teases him for doubting, and the boy says he was just testing it out, so there's nothing for today. Memory asks what he wants to look into next. A grand building basks in soft sunlight as a cheerful voice promises to be called upon if needed. The boy opens a door and greets his mother. Asking how she feels, she smiles warmly, assuring him she's adjusting her medicine dose day by day, so there's no need to worry. Sandra confirms the mother feels much better thanks to the medicine. The boy watches the two women, thinking about the sadist pretending to be innocent. He resolves to perfect the cure soon, hoping to save not only his mother but others suffering the same affliction. He recalls how Sandra became his mother's personal doctor after a near-fatal fit, and that he transferred his mana measurement to her as well. A small figure asks if he's thinking anything rude, and he nervously denies it. The boy winces as his mother gently touches his face, asking why he looks so stiff. She advises him not to push himself too hard, but he says he was just thinking. Sandra reminds him it's time to meet Rainer-sama, who has called for him, and she bids him to give Rainer her regards. A serious man announces that the schedule for the boy's visit to Rinarut has been decided. The boy's eyes widen in shock and determination as he realizes the moment has finally come. The reason for asking his father to go to Rinarut was to find a cure for his mother's disease. A major problem lies with the mana potion ingredient, moonlight grass, which cannot be cultivated and is only obtainable through Chris Company. Rinarut is known for advanced farming technology, and securing a supply line there could solve this issue. He recalls from past life memories that it's more likely to find information on the ingredients needed for a mana deficiency cure in Rinarut. He worries that King Elias is trying to maintain friendly terms, but some vassals oppose the marriage, possibly plotting to interfere. It's likely they will try to make him back out of the marriage, potentially replacing him with someone else from the royal family. While he understands a vassal state might seek equality, it would be dangerous if they go too far. The boy asks his father how he knows this, and the father explains no country has a united will. If one only obtains surface information, they cannot protect their territory or country. The boy realizes his father has a collaborator on Rinarut's side. The father promises to teach him these things gradually, and the boy asks him to go easy on him. The boy acknowledges the difficult situation, facing the Magnolia Empire and Rainer Baldia, known as the strongest sword, whose territory borders their nation. The narration identifies Rainer Baldia as the Empire's sword and Grade Kelvin as its shield. The king understands the boy's concerns and asks if he thinks the conditions are good, but the boy hesitates, sensing complications ahead. Noble Norris Tamuska asserts that the suitable course for them would be a marriage with the imperial family. His supporters agree, but a dark elf officer, troubled, reflects on Norris's ambition to use the marriage as a political tool to enter the empire's central politics and release Rinarut from vassal status. Despite this, the officer worries that stirring conflict with the empire endangers their country and people. He acknowledges Norris's pride as a dark elf and his humiliation over their alliance with the empire being nominal, lacking equal negotiation power. The dark elf officer, Raisis, confronts his father, accusing him of handing over his little sister, Farah, as a hostage to the empire. The father dismisses the claim as nonsense and insists that Farah's age, just 6 years old, and the fact that no country allows marriage at that age, should matter. Raisis demands to know why his father must go so far, refusing to accept the arrangement. The father explains that the marriage is meant to tie their countries together. Emphasizing that everything has exceptions, he advises Raisis, as the future king, to learn how to analyze situations and make decisions accordingly. Raisis, however, remains defiant, shouting that he still cannot agree to it. The father observes that Raisis is a fine prince, but losing control of his emotions reveals his youth. He tells Raisis to cool off in his room. Raisis apologizes for speaking beyond his position as he walks away. Outside, two figures approach, catching his attention as he contemplates the situation. Raisis greets his little sister Farah warmly, noting how rare it is to see her so far from her room. Farah explains that their mother called for her, so she's on her way to her room. Raisis admits he was speaking with their father, who scolded him and told him to cool off. Farah reacts with surprise, unable to believe their father scolded him. He reflects that Farah is as beautiful as their mother, Eltia-sama, and that she receives strict lessons daily, making her behavior seem more mature than her age. He quietly declares that she is his pride and joy. Farah smiles brightly, while both siblings stand together, sharing a quiet moment. A companion reminds Farah that they should get going, and she agrees, bowing politely to Raisis with a respectful farewell. As they walk away, Raisis's expression hardens with determination. He vows firmly that Farah should not be neglected in any way whatsoever. Raisis clenches his fist tightly, shouting a solemn oath to protect his little sister no matter what. Behind him, Farah and their companion watch with calm resolve, while a young boy nearby smiles encouragingly. The boy exclaims in frustration over the confusing memories, calling out, "Rid." He explains that the special magic he created, called memory, allows him to call for memory inside his head, who then searches for any information requested. However, every moment spent talking consumes his mana, like a pay-per-minute phone call. Despite this, he asks what was found about the main story of Tokarela, while pondering why memory is scolding him now. The other figure, reclining and amused, points out that the boy played with the skip unread option on the game, prompting the boy to admit he barely remembers the main story because he mostly played in extra free mode. The boy reflects that the game was a Cinderella-style otome game with princes from different kingdoms, and he thinks the character he used was named Ray Sis, who was easy to train and use. The reclining figure teases him about skipping parts, noting that digging through memories only yields a messy jumble like torn, crumpled paper, making it impossible to make sense of. The boy admits he never explained what kind of memories can be searched. He clarifies that only things he consciously saw, like internet videos, school textbooks, or random conversations overheard, can be recalled. Memories of ads or coworkers' rants, which he wasn't interested in, cannot be accessed. The boy asks if the other will give it a try, acknowledging it's a lot to ask but hoping for help. The other agrees reluctantly, warning not to expect too much. Outside, the boy struggles as the other commands him to observe his movements during training. The boy gasps in pain but admits the training is tough. Surprised, he asks if this is body strengthening with mana, and the other confirms it's time to teach him how to strengthen his body using mana. The boy asks if he can simply imagine himself getting stronger, but the other insists that's too vague. He explains two conditions: the ability to produce mana and a basic understanding of martial arts, which means knowing how to move the body. He warns that if one only knows how to handle mana but isn't familiar with their body, they can't cast spells. The key is to grasp the feeling of moving the body while channeling mana until it becomes subconscious. The boy reacts with surprise as the other assures him mastering this means hardly ever running out of breath, with no downside. The other adds that knights often say, "You have to feel, not think," prompting the boy to mutter, "Damn muscleheads." The boy asks Rubens if he has been using this technique the entire time, including during their lessons. Rubens confirms with a smile. The boy realizes why Rubens never got exhausted no matter how long their lessons lasted. Noting Rubens had infinite stamina while his own was limited, a mysterious voice chuckles, calling out, "Rid-sama." The boy declares that once he learns body strengthening, he will surely beat Rubens. He challenges him, and Rubens accepts with enthusiasm. They agree to first channel mana through their bodies while running laps around the training ground, turning the training into a sports-like method. The boy comments on how energetic the approach is. The boy notices he is getting less tired than usual and wonders if it's because of his magic training with Sandra. Rubens praises him for quickly getting the hang of it and says being talented in both magic and martial arts is wonderful. The boy modestly says in 10 years or so, he won't be able to hold a candle to Rubens, who laughs it off. Rubens admits amazement that the boy kept up with his lessons for so long without body strengthening. The training intensifies as the boy is ordered to run as fast as he can with body strengthening activated. He responds eagerly and then moves on to push-ups, sit-ups, and other basic exercises. After running while circulating mana in his body, he feels the difference and continues sparring with Rubens, now empowered by body strengthening. During their sparring, the boy declares his determination to land a hit on Rubens, who laughs and encourages him, saying he still has a long way to go. The boy reflects that after learning body strengthening, martial arts lessons have become more enjoyable, and he hardly feels tired despite exerting himself more. Yet, he acknowledges a gap in experience. Reach, weight, and size still prevents him from defeating Rubens. The boy's resolve grows stronger with each loss, fueling his desire to win. He plans to use their size difference to his advantage by closing in on Rubens, believing that if he can land a punch or kick, he might turn the tide. He pushes forward, determined to keep going despite the challenges. Rubens suddenly disarms the boy and praises his fighting spirit, but tells him the lesson is over for the day. He advises the boy to only challenge opponents closer to his size or frailty, and commends him for not giving up after losing his sword. The boy looks surprised but acknowledges that training with Rubens is valuable, even if today's session has ended. A voice announces a special instructor has arrived, revealing that everything done so far was merely a warm-up. The boy, shocked, struggles to believe the intensity he endured was just preparation. Suddenly, a figure appears, apologizing for being late due to piled-up work. The boy recognizes the newcomer as Rainer-sama, who asks if he has gotten used to the training. The boy stammers, calling him father in surprise. The boy reflects on never imagining his next opponent after Rubens would be his own father. Determined, he wants to know just how strong his father is and how much he can do against him. The father challenges him to come at him with everything, including body strengthening. The boy, nervous but resolute, asks if his father is sure. The boy lunges forward with his sword, ready to fight. The father blocks the attack with ease, complimenting the boy's body strengthening and swordsmanship as incredible for his age, admitting he is terrified of his own son's strength. The father smirks confidently, asking if the boy is done yet. The boy, panting and determined, insists he is far from finished. He lunges forward with his sword, but the father blocks it effortlessly. The father declares he will come at him this time, challenging the boy to give his all. The boy grimaces, sweat dripping as he braces himself for the next attack. The boy pants heavily, preparing to defend himself. The father launches a swift kick, forcing the boy to dodge and react quickly. The boy admits he's never felt this tired before and wonders why this round was shorter than his previous fight with Rubens. The father acknowledges the boy has proven himself capable by passing the wooden sword test. The father tells the boy he wants to see his grit next. The boy questions what grit means, and the father explains it's the mental strength to stay composed no matter what happens. He advises the boy to understand his current self, reminding him that grit will be a matter of life and death in real combat. The boy listens intently as the father's aide brings a sword. The father inspects the sword, noting it has no nicks or scratches and should be fine. He instructs the boy, Rid, to promise to take a stance and not move no matter what happens. Keeping his eyes on him, the boy agrees confidently. The father smiles, amused, and says it looks like the boy will be worth training. The father's gaze sharpens as he draws his sword, declaring he's about to begin. The boy's eyes widen in shock, sensing a new kind of pressure unlike before. He realizes this intense feeling belongs to his father alone. The father moves with fierce determination, his stance solid and unwavering as he prepares to strike. The word, true, echoes, emphasizing the genuine threat he poses. The boy's fear intensifies as he senses the father's killing intent, a deadly resolve radiating from the blade aimed at him. His breath catches, overwhelmed by the sudden danger. The boy screams in terror as the sword comes crashing down, tears streaming down his face. The father stands tall and composed, the sword poised above the fallen boy in a quiet forest clearing. The boy apologizes, admitting he lost to the fear of the sword and the first experience of his father's killing intent. The father, standing firm with his sword, reminds him not to close his eyes and to keep watching. He acknowledges the boy's bravery for his age and reassures him that everyone struggles at first. The boy reflects that his father never intended to kill him, though the fear was real as the blade came down. The father explains that what the boy must overcome is grit, the resolve to face fear on a real battlefield. He warns that without grit, fear will create openings for the enemy, leading to death. The key is to embrace and get used to fear, not ignore it. The father declares this will be the boy's next training, asking if he can do it. The boy responds with determination, shouting, "Bring it on!" Another man comments that Rainer-sama's teaching style is special, unlike his own due to his position. The boy is encouraged to do his best. Rainer-sama smiles warmly and tells the boy he will swing his sword again, instructing him not to close his eyes and to follow every move carefully. The sword swings toward the boy once more. The boy flinches, scared, biting his arm to steady himself. He admits the strike feels like it might really cut him, but he knows this fear is necessary to improve his survival odds on the battlefield. The boy steels himself, insisting he must watch closely and not close his eyes. His gaze sharpens as he vows to witness every trace of his father's sword. The boy braces as the sword swings near, his eyes wide with focus and determination. The father remarks that the boy has clearly grown used to the training. The boy pants heavily, surprised by the intensity, but readies himself for the next stage. The father sets a challenge. The boy, Rid, must cross a marked line and reach Rubens while the father tries to stop him with his sword. Rid clenches his fist, resolved to try his best as the father warns his attacks won't be easy. Rid dashes forward, but the father strikes swiftly, his sword cutting the air just ahead of Rid. The boy gasps at the speed, struggling to keep up as the blade flashes dangerously close. The boy feels more accustomed to the training now, believing he has a chance. His eyes blaze with determination as he clenches his fist, vowing to overcome his father's sword. He plants his foot firmly, ready to push forward. The boy calls out joyfully to Rubens, who responds with a warm smile. He leaps into Rubens' arms, relieved and happy to have reached him. Rubens praises the boy's effort, moved to tears, acknowledging the harshness of the father's swordsmanship. The boy pants heavily, embraced by Rubens, while the father watches with a faint smile. He offers to join the boy's swordsmanship lessons regularly and suggests they stop training for the day. The father insists this training will happen every time. Startling the boy, Rubens explains that Rainer-sama has wanted to share this time with the boy and is pleased they can train together. The boy, overwhelmed, realizes his father's strictness is a form of care. A young girl calls out urgently, running toward a group that includes a boy and 2 adults. The boy turns, responding calmly to her call. The girl, accompanied by a maid, approaches quickly, her eyes wide and determined. The boy asks what's wrong, his attention fully captured. The girl suddenly lashes out, hitting the boy's father repeatedly while shouting that she hates him for bullying her brother. The father is shocked and taken aback by her outburst. The maid apologizes, explaining that Melody insisted on seeing the father despite the training, but she was told to watch from the sidelines. The boy stands nearby, covered in wounds from the training. The boy tries to calm the girl, explaining that their father was only harsh for his sake and that she shouldn't say such things. The girl clings to him, still upset but listening. The father stands behind them, overwhelmed and thinking the girl hates him. The boy praises her as a good kid, encouraging her to move on now that training is over. A few days later, the father sits alone, lamenting that he made Melody hate him again. Melody timidly approaches, apologizing for saying she hates him. The father is moved to tears, touched by her apology. He praises her warmly, grateful for her words and the effort she made to reconcile. A young girl with twin tails calls out softly to her older brother, pleading for him to come back soon. She holds his hand tightly, her eyes full of earnest hope. The boy whispers her name gently, catching her attention. Nearby, a tall man watches silently. The girl suddenly clings to the man's leg, surprising him and causing a small onlooker to react in shock. She calls out to the man as father, who turns toward her with mild curiosity. The man lifts the girl into his arms, smiling warmly as she asks him to return soon. He promises to come back as quickly as he can, reassuring her. The girl beams happily, making him promise again. A boy nearby nods, acknowledging the promise with a smile. Another figure advises the boy to be cautious with his magic, while a woman confidently declares she will take care of someone named Nunnally-sama. The scene shifts to a bright day as a carriage prepares to depart. A young man salutes energetically, declaring their departure to Rinarut. A woman sits quietly in a bed, while others bustle around the carriage. The girl waves enthusiastically, bidding farewell as the carriage begins its journey. As the boy sets off, the narration explains that two certain monsters encounter each other deep within the demon forest in eastern Rinarut. The forest is dense and shadowy, with ominous movement among the trees. The boy's face is calm and determined as the story moves forward. The chapter opens deep within a dense forest, rain softly falling through thick foliage. A small, translucent slime-like creature rests inside a hollow tree root, surrounded by shadows and dripping leaves. Suddenly, a large green snake appears, startling the slime. It panics, realizing it let its guard down and fears being eaten or dying. The snake hisses menacingly as it lunges toward the slime. Just as the snake attacks, a fierce black cat leaps in, growling and clawing at the serpent. The snake hisses back in defense, caught off guard by the cat's sudden intervention. The slime watches in shock and awe. The black cat bites down on the snake, holding it firmly while the slime admires the cat's bravery and strength. The slime's admiration is clear as it thinks the black cat is incredibly cool, while the snake struggles beneath the cat's grip. In the demon forest, where mana is dense, slimes are the most numerous creatures and sit at the bottom of the food pyramid. Slimes multiply by gathering mana until they have enough to split into two. But occasionally a unique slime is born that never splits and continues to absorb mana. This particular slime, by accumulating mana, developed a new emotion. That new emotion is fear. A large beast looms nearby as a smaller reptilian creature attacks the slime, causing it to tremble uncontrollably. The slime, destined to live in constant fear as a quarry, knows it must hide to survive. It leaves the safety of the group, trying to live stealthily. But a green snake spots it. The black cat, sensing something, calls out to the slime. The cat questions why the slime is following it, eyes narrowing with suspicion. The slime trails behind the cat as it moves toward a hollow tree, both alert to the dangers lurking in the forest. The black cat decides to keep a piece of meat as an emergency food supply, worried it would be eaten if left alone. The cat silently allows the slime to come inside, marking the start of their unusual cohabitation. Returning with a fresh kill, the cat is surprised to find its nest spotless. It questions the slime, realizing the bones and leftovers have become the slime's meal, transforming the mess into cleanliness. The cat insists the slime eat the meat, clarifying it's just a thank you for cleaning, not a gift. The cat warns the slime it can stay but must keep the nest clean. Despite hating cleaning itself, the slime nods in understanding. From that day forward, the black cat hunted prey while the slime maintained the nest's cleanliness. Though unable to speak, they gradually learned to understand each other's intentions, living together in harmony for a time. The slime gently calls the black cat, urging it to wake up and hunt, but the cat lazily protests, saying it will hunt only when hungry. Suddenly startled, the cat realizes it can hear the slime speaking and questions if it's magic, surprised since it never knew slimes could talk. The slime happily admits it has always wanted to talk to the cat, suggesting the cat's strong desire triggered its ability to speak. The cat playfully challenges the slime, asking if it wants to look like it too, promising to take the slime as its wife if it turns out cute. The slime excitedly vows to pray for that every day, while the cat scoffs with a smirk. The cat reflects on rumors about a shadow cougar and a slime duo living in the demon forest. Noting they seem to get along well, it wonders if the forest is dangerous but recalls they appear near the entrance where monsters are scarce, likely for the slime's safety, and imagines they'd fetch a good price if caught. One night, the slime excitedly calls out to the black cat. Eager to show it something, the cat, puzzled, watches as the slime moves toward it. But then the cat suddenly reacts with surprise and calls out urgently. The white cat stretches and lets out a majestic howl, its eyes slowly opening with a sparkling glow. The black cat, still raising its paws, watches the white cat and asks what it thinks of the change. The white cat explains it chose white because the other was black. The black cat nervously stammers, calling the white cat really cute, and the white cat reminds it of a promise made earlier. The black cat, flustered, insists it remembers the promise. The white cat gently asks if it truly remembers, while the black cat admits it does. The black cat reflects that species or appearance don't matter, only its attraction to the slime, who worked hard to learn magic and even imitate it. It vows to reward all the slime's effort. Under a starry night sky, the black cat solemnly asks the white cat to become his mate and wife, expressing his desire to stay with her forever. The white cat listens intently, eyes sparkling with emotion. The black cat firmly insists that despite being a slime, he wants her as his mate now and forever, demanding confirmation. The white cat hesitates, questioning if she is truly sure, but the black cat's resolve is unwavering. Overcome with emotion, the white cat embraces the black cat, confessing her love. They become an unusual couple, living quietly together in the demon forest, their tails entwined as they walk side by side. Their peaceful life is interrupted when they encounter two men, one carrying a large wooden beam, described as a child of man possessing mysterious power. The story hints at future events, leaving this encounter for another time as the scene shifts to a young person resting by a window. The journey to Rinarut includes the narrator, their father, Rubens, Diana, and several knights from Baldia territory, with the Christie Company joining to secure supply lines. They are making good progress but have just arrived at an inn city for the night. The narrator struggles with the grueling experience of traveling long distances by horse carriage, while a confident companion assures them they'll get used to it. Exhausted, the narrator decides to rest and calls out to Memory, who anticipated being summoned. Memory reports finding nothing particularly useful in the memories checked so far but reveals discovering a name. Prince Raisis Rinarut, who resides in the country they are headed to. The narrator eagerly asks to see the image Memory obtained. Memory shows a portrait of a young man with black hair, yellow eyes, and the signature dark elf tan skin. The narrator notes the prince's Tsundra-like expression and remarks on the difficulty of having a Tsundra brother-in-law. They thank Memory for the effort, who modestly replies not to mention it. A knock at the door interrupts the moment, and Chris enters, apologizing for disturbing the narrator's rest. She offers candies infused with herbs, meant to ease sickness from long trips, surprised and grateful. The narrator asks if Chris brought them specifically for their sake. The elf girl beams with a radiant smile, her hand extended as she offers candies, prompting the question if she is a goddess. She cheerfully explains she always brings some in hopes the taste is liked. The boy gratefully accepts, promising to do his best when they continue tomorrow, his enthusiasm shining through. On the moving carriage, the boy announces that Rinarut's border is just ahead, catching the attention of a serious man in uniform. The narration explains that Rinarut wasn't a key location in the main story of Tokerella but had elements that excited players. The reason for this is hinted at as the man looks on thoughtfully. The scene shifts to a dark elf in a sharp uniform, his hand gripping the sheath of a sword that gleams with intricate detail. The narration reveals the fusion of Eastern and Western cultures, emphasizing the unique nature of the dark elves. The atmosphere is tense and significant as the dark elf stands resolute. The dark elf adjusts his glove with a calm, commanding presence, flanked by another uniformed figure. The boy watches in awe, exclaiming how cool the fusion of cultures is. The setting is a traditional street guarded by soldiers, underscoring the blend of influences and the importance of the moment. The boy marvels at the scene, noting the blend of cultures with people wearing kimonos alongside others dressed in Western clothes like himself. He compares it to Japan after the Meiji Restoration. A man in a formal coat explains that this cultural mix stems from the alliance between Rinarut and Magnolia after the Bulst incident, encouraging the boy to take it all in as a chance to expand his horizons. The boy excitedly points out rice paddies, something common in Rinarut but not seen in Magnolia, He smiles, expressing his longing for Japanese food, and decides to have Chris set up a supply line to import rice to Baldia. A majestic castle looms as the boy repeats his craving for Japanese food. He steels himself, reminding himself to focus because the princess and those opposing their marriage await there. The gates to the guest palace open with a creak. The boy announces that this is where they will be staying and promises to summon attendants to care for them, addressing Rainer-sama and Rid-sama as he gestures toward the grand estate. Zach Rivorton warmly welcomes them to Rinarut, introducing himself as the person in charge of the main building and their care during the stay. The boy recognizes Zach and thanks him for his work, especially in relaying information between the capital and Rinarut. Zach humbly replies that he's done no more than a carrier pigeon would. Inside the guest palace, Zach explains that it was designed to closely resemble Magnolia's culture. He adds that although hot springs are rare in Magnolia, there is one here. The boy's eyes widen in excitement at the mention of a hot spring, feeling this place is everything he could want. Thrilled to finally have a proper bath after so long, the boy stretches out on a bed, joyfully exclaiming that they have finally arrived. A voice praises him for hanging in there, addressing him respectfully as Rid-sama. Suddenly, a woman dressed in a maid uniform appears, startling the boy. She introduces herself as Diana, explaining she will serve as both his bodyguard and attendant while in Rinarut, asking him to call on her if he needs anything. The boy, surprised by her outfit, wonders if it will be hard for her to fight dressed like that, but quickly accepts her care with a grateful smile. The maid smiles confidently, telling him not to worry as she reveals more weapons, each one easy to use and her personal favorite. The boy gasps in surprise, overwhelmed by the sudden display and the clattering of weapons. He quickly raises his hands, pleading for her to stop and saying he's had enough. She calmly asks why he has so many assassin weapons despite being a knight, explaining that some knights use them too. The maid explains the difference in builds between men and women, admitting she sometimes can't win a head-on fight and must rely on assassin weapons to compensate. She quietly adds that she had to join the knight's order no matter what. The boy nervously admits the reason she worked so hard was for Reuben's sake. She blushes, agreeing, and recalls how Rubens, the crybaby, worked so hard that she had to do her best as well. The boy quickly denies that he worked hard for anyone else, insisting it was for himself. The maid firmly declares that during their stay in Rinarut, she will be his maid and take care of him. She adds that she's been ordered to stay in the same room as him, so he should just think of her as nothing but air. Her expression turns serious and intense, warning him that he's far too noticeable to ignore. The boy smiles softly, then decides to go to sleep, asking to be woken if anything happens. The view shifts to a quiet, dimly lit mansion at night, emphasizing the calm before any potential disturbance. A servant informs the princess that the Baldia family has arrived at the guest palace. The princess, with a calm and thoughtful expression, acknowledges the news quietly to herself. The bodyguard reflects on being assigned to protect the princess, who was rumored to be married off to Magnolia. She realizes her family used this as a way to get rid of her, likely spurred by jealous older brothers. Despite feeling resentment about being chased out of the country, she silently accepted the task. She resolves that as long as she can perfect her swordsmanship, it will be enough. At 12 years old, Asuna Lamarck becomes the princess's sword. During training, a stern instructor yells at her for holding her sword incorrectly, reminding her she is the princess of their nation and must be perfect. The princess apologizes, but the instructor insists mistakes are not allowed and she must set an example. Asuna tries to protest, but a commanding voice reminds them this is by the orders of the king and Eltia-sama, asking if she still has a problem. The lessons are harsh and last from morning till night, covering not only swordsmanship but also culture, national structure, and the nobles of Magnolia. Asuna learns the princess has endured these harsh days long before she became her bodyguard. Spending time together, Asuna comes to realize she wants to be someone who supports the princess. The princess reassures Asuna that it's just the usual hardships. She thanks Asuna for worrying about her and admits the strict, difficult lessons every day are something she must bear and do her best through. Tears stream down the princess's face as she confesses that no matter how hard she works, she never gets to see her mother or father, and she feels utterly alone. The princess curls up, hearing her mother's voice commanding her to marry the crown prince of Magnolia and warning her not to let the son of the marquis into her heart. Despite her protests, she acknowledges her mother's orders. Lying awake, the princess reflects on how everything in her life has been decided by her mother, leaving her no freedom to choose. She recalls being sent secretly to the Baldia territory to get a feel for the country before the marriage, where her excitement led her to get lost. He wonders if the boy who helped him is still in that land and hopes he is doing well. His thoughts trail off as he reflects quietly. Standing before a painting of a woman combing her long hair, He wishes they could meet again someday. He marvels at the skill and beauty of the artwork, captivated by its grace. Inside a lavish room, a maid teases him for being a naughty boy after he praises the painting. He nervously denies it, explaining he was simply captivated. The butler reveals the painting's model was Eltia, Eliasama's concubine, which surprises him. Shocked, he learns Eltia is the mother of Princess Farah. He can't believe he was captivated by his marriage partner's mother. The butler assures him that since he likes the painting, Princess Farah will also be to his liking, noting her strong resemblance to Eltia. He asks Zack Rivorton if he opposes their marriage, though he admits it's not his place to say. He hopes the princess finds happiness. Zack reflects that not everyone in Rinarut opposes the Baldia family. Some are neutral or friendly. He notes King Elias likely supports the marriage. Realizing this, he admits he really wants Zack on their side, apologizing for the difficult question. He confesses that if Princess Farah truly resembles the woman in the painting, he might fall in love at first sight. The young man cheerfully asks Zack if he would support them if he agrees. Striking a playful pose, Zack smiles quietly, speechless at the request. Zack confirms with a polite bow that he would love to support them. The young man clenches his fist in determination, excited to have secured the promise. Meanwhile, a woman wonders if Rid did something, as she looks at 2 empty cups and a vase of roses. Zack explains that he wants to support the love between himself and the princess, showing he understands the political implications. The young man curses Rid for not hiding his intentions better. Zack promises to personally show his full support, having made the other say so much. The narration reveals Zack Rivorton is related to Eltia, the king's concubine, and is the current head of the Rivorton family. The organization secretly controlled by Zack serves as Rinarut's intelligence network, and he takes direct orders from King Elias. Someone like Zack has just announced full support for my son. He is my collaborator in Rinarut. The conversation shifts to the upcoming audience with the king tomorrow, cutting straight to the chase. A young man respectfully calls out to Raisa-sama to discuss what Norris is up to. Norris responds that the plan is proceeding smoothly and thanks him for accepting his idea, acknowledging the help he's provided. The young man reflects bitterly on how cruel his father is, ignoring how Queen Riesel feels. He notes that his father is again with Eltia-sama. It has been secretly agreed that Princess Farah will marry off to Magnolia, while only Raisis, the crown prince, will remain in Rinarut. Raisis and Farah have different mothers. Raisis's mother, Queen Riesel, and Norris are related. Meanwhile, Norris has been whispering in Raisis's ear, trying to make him a pawn. The narration reveals that King Elias only loves Eltia-sama and dislikes Raisis, which is why Raisis rarely sees Princess Farah. His Majesty visits Queen Riesel only occasionally but goes to Eltia-sama's room every day. Raisis has seen his mother look sad sometimes, and it has been affecting him deeply. The young prince lashes out in frustration, declaring he will never be a king like his father, who has caused their mother so much sadness. An older elf gently reassures him, promising unwavering support and urging him to follow his guidance to become a wonderful king and person. The elder calls the prince by title and warns him to be careful, reminding him that tomorrow's fate lies in his hands. The prince solemnly vows to protect his little sister, showing determination despite the heavy burden. In a shadowy chamber, a figure asks about the prince's condition. Another shadowy presence confirms the prince trusts the elder completely and remains unsuspecting. The first figure commands to be informed immediately if anything happens, and the other agrees silently. The elder smirks confidently, declaring that everything is going according to plan. He taunts an unseen opponent, calling him a Magnolian hick, and challenges him to watch what unfolds next. Princess Farah struggles with wearing Western clothes for the first time, finding it quite difficult. Asuna reassures her that the outfit suits her very well. Farah, touched, thanks Asuna sincerely, asking if she truly means it. Farah asks if the marriage candidate would like the dress too. Asuna confidently replies yes, gently taking Farah's hand. Eltia kneels before Farah, complimenting her beauty and expressing confidence that the candidate will find her pretty. Farah breathes a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a knock sounds at the door, and someone invites them to come in. Queen Riesel enters, noticing Farah wearing the dress she sent. Farah bows deeply, thanking her mother for the gift. The queen coldly warns that the marriage candidate is not from the imperial family but the son of a marquis, and stresses that Farah must not bring shame upon Rinarut. Eltia internally notes how piercing the queen's words are and reflects on the poor parent-child relationship between the candidate and his family. The queen warns that showing perfection could lead to marriage talks with the royal family. Princess Farah closes her eyes, acknowledging this pressure. The queen decides to leave first, and Eltia gently asks if Farah is all right, who exhales in relief. Farah admits it's just business as usual. Eltia notes the candidate is likely a promising man, advising Farah to decide after meeting him. Farah thanks Asuna for her kindness and asks if she has heard anything about the candidate. Asuna only knows his name. She recalls the name Rid Baldia-sama, looking out the window thoughtfully. Meanwhile, an elf man respectfully asks Queen Riesel if he may proceed with their previous discussion. The queen tells him it's up to him to decide. The man promises to proceed with preparations carefully, reminding her that although the candidate is a marquis son, he is still a noble of the empire. The queen reflects that the princess must marry a royal family member to benefit the country, doubting anyone will meet those expectations. The young noble nervously adjusts his collar, wondering if he looks strange. He twirls around in front of the mirror, questioning himself. The maid chides him for spending too long in front of the mirror, catching him off guard. She teases that he's acting like a young lady about to meet the prince for the first time, leaving him flustered. The maid encourages him, calling him a cute and handsome boy, telling him to be proud and act normal since clothes are just decorations. He shyly thanks her but warns she'll make him blush if she keeps calling him cute. She smiles warmly, noting if he were a girl, marriage proposals would flood in. Suddenly, a dark elf servant announces that Rainer-sama is waiting, signaling it's time to leave. The young noble and the maid prepare to go, the noble reflecting on a tip his friends gave him. The dark elf explains that the opposition faction is led by an elder dark elf named Norris, who holds significant influence over Prince Raisis. He quickly shares valuable information, including that both Eltia-sama and Princess Farah-sama desire marriage into the imperial family, making their stance likely neutral. The noble is surprised by the speed of the information and contemplates that neutrality makes sense since they don't know much about him. The bigger problem is Prince Raisis, who might be the biggest obstacle if he's influenced by Norris, the opposition leader. The young noble wonders how to gain Raisis' acceptance, hoping to win support since Raisis would be his brother-in-law. The dark elf servant asks what should be done in that case. The servant suggests it might be best to temporarily crush Prince Raisis' spirit. The noble is shocked by the idea but listens as the servant explains he doesn't want to hurt Raisis, only to break his spirit. Currently, Raisis admires Norris. The servant recalls how Raisis used to be a wise prince who put the country first, but his regard for Norris grew intense. His speech and actions now contradict his position, and he seems mentally unstable. The servant commands the noble to crush that unstable spirit. The servant offers this as a request from a noble concerned about Rinarut, telling the noble to leave the rest to him. The noble and maid are surprised by the servant's unexpected proposal. The servant reflects that at first, he thought the noble was dodging the question, but then he saw the potential reply was a request from a Rinarut noble if it became a big deal. The dark elf servant sees this as a chance to make a big impact. The young boy asks why Prince Raisis admires Norris so much, but the servant apologizes, saying it's beyond his station to explain. The boy agrees to try and change Raisis' heart, promising to do his best and thanking the servant for the help. A stern man scolds the boy for being late, but the boy apologizes with a smile, explaining they ended up talking for a while. The servant announces he will be leaving and declines to join them, wishing to hear of their exploits later. The boy wonders what the servant meant by that. A carriage approaches a large military fortress, not the castle the boy expected. A soldier confirms the identity of Marquis Rainer Baldia, who requests an audience with King Elias. The fortress is guarded and formal, signaling the importance of the meeting. The group is greeted and told they have been expected. The maid announces that all attending the audience must leave their weapons behind. The leader assigns Rid, Rubens, Diana, and himself to enter, while the others wait outside. The boy and maid prepare to follow as they proceed inside. The group arrives at a grand Japanese-style building, the young boy marveling at its architecture. A soldier instructs them to remove their footwear before entering. Two women in traditional attire silently slide open a door, announcing that everyone is waiting just inside. Inside, a long corridor stretches before them, lined with numerous figures standing solemnly on both sides. The ceiling is ornately decorated, and the atmosphere is heavy with anticipation. The group advances deeper, passing a gathering of dignitaries and guards. The young boy, the man with long hair, the maid, and others walk forward, all focused on the meeting ahead. As they step through the doorway, eyes filled with suspicion, curiosity, doubt, and interest watch them from the shadows. The man leads the group forward, telling the boy to follow, who looks up in quiet surprise. A single empty chair stands alone, prompting a stunned silence. An elf-like man apologizes, explaining only Marquis Rainer Baldia has been granted an audience with King Elias, so only one chair is provided. The realization dawns quietly. The man with light hair, Rid, asks for the boy's opinion. The boy promises to stay right beside him, and Rid accepts reluctantly. The boy notices the elf's furious expression but smiles wryly, sensing the cold reception he receives. The boy struggles to stay calm as two figures nearby angrily accuse the man and maid of disrespecting Rid-sama. The boy is urged to calm down and obediently bows, following instructions to keep his knees bent and head lowered until told otherwise. The scene shifts to a formal hall where Marquis Rainer Baldia from the Magnolia Empire's Baldia territory makes his entrance, walking solemnly toward the king's presence. Others kneel in respect as the atmosphere thickens with tension. A commanding voice breaks the silence, telling everyone they may raise their heads. The crowd slowly lifts their gaze to see King Elias seated on his throne, flanked by a stern young man in a white uniform, a woman standing behind a young girl in a delicate dress, and two other figures. The king's presence fills the room with authority as he grips the armrest of his throne firmly. The young man beside the king stares intently forward, while the young girl's eyes widen in surprise. The boy who had been watching from the side now looks on with a serious expression, absorbing the gravity of the moment. A tall man with long hair approaches and greets the seated man as Rainer Dano, acknowledging the long passage of time. The boy quietly notes this is King Elias. The king asks if the child beside him is his son, confirming the boy's identity. The visitor apologizes for the fuss but explains many requested to see the boy, as he is the prospective marriage partner for the princess. The boy introduces himself as Rid Baldia, son of Rainer Baldia, lord of the Baldia territory in the Magnolia Empire, and offers his greetings to Princess Farah. The king inquires about his age, noting it matches his own son Raisis and Princess Farah. The young girl is then prompted to introduce herself, stepping forward quietly as the room watches. The young girl introduces herself with a gentle smile, declaring she is Farah Reinarut, daughter of Elias Reinarut from the Reinarut kingdom. The boy's eyes widen in surprise at her words. She bows gracefully and says it's nice to meet everyone. Her ears twitch slightly, catching the attention of those nearby. Eltia Riverton steps forward, identifying himself as Farah's mother and the model for a famous painting. Liesel Reinarut, Elias's wife, and Raisis Reinarut stand beside her, confirming their family ties. Elias Reinarut greets the group warmly, expressing hope for a cordial relationship in the future. He then asks for their opinions on the matter. The boy contemplates how to respond, aware of the weight behind the invitation. The boy observes the tense exchange between Raisis and Norris, noting Norris's agreement with Raisis likely means he wants to avoid leaving an impression. The boy resolves to handle Norris first, deciding to act in a way that will provoke him the most. He prepares himself mentally, determined to face the challenge ahead. The boy insists that the union between the Reinarut and Baldia families must absolutely happen. Shock ripples through the gathered crowd. The king, seated with a young girl beside him, finds the proposal interesting and urges him to continue. The boy explains that the Reinarut and Baldia territories border each other, and strengthening their relations would deter neighboring countries, citing Balst as an example. The king confirms their kingdoms already have an alliance and questions if that is insufficient. The boy clarifies his point, warning that Balst might doubt Magnolia's immediate support despite alliances. He elaborates that Baldia holds the rank of Marquis, allowing it to mobilize its army independently in emergencies. Being married would give him cause to defend his wife and their allied country, enabling immediate mobilization without waiting for imperial orders. The boy believes this would be a stronger deterrent than a mere alliance. Another voice challenges the boy, arguing that despite the alliance, Baldia cannot move its army at a moment's notice. Mobilizing an army prioritizes defending one's own country first, and without empire orders, Baldia couldn't act on border attacks alone. The boy turns to his father, seeking confirmation, while the girl beside him looks on anxiously. The king dismisses the boy's words as childish but admits a marriage alliance would indeed be a stronger deterrent. The boy smiles brightly, hinting there are more reasons, though they must remain secret until after the wedding. The king laughs heartily, amused by the boy's unconventional ideas for a Marquis heir. He admits that if the boy were from an enemy country, he wouldn't sleep peacefully. The Dark Elf Lord angrily protests that these are just childish words. The king acknowledges the boy by his proper name, praising his practical ideas. He advises both the boy and the Dark Elf Lord to broaden their horizons. The Dark Elf Lord stiffens, but the king continues, suggesting the boy's words should come from someone skilled in both pen and sword. The king extends a gloved hand, requesting to see the boy's martial prowess and asks if he would humor the request. The boy looks surprised and slightly nervous at the challenge. The chapter opens with a wide view of a traditional building and a young boy walking toward it. He explains he came to meet Princess Farah, but the meeting unexpectedly turned into a marriage match. The boy nervously addresses Rid-sama as he approaches. Inside, two men sit observing, while a Dark Elf Lord and two women in uniform stand nearby, watching the boy. A maid presents the boy with a wooden sword, urging him to take it. He thanks her but wonders why Diana has a wooden sword instead of a real one. The maid explains the official sword prepared for him is low quality and meant to embarrass him, but she personally chose this wooden sword so he can use it safely. The maid's expression darkens as she commands him to crush the ingrates without mercy. Demanding a promise, the boy, determined, rolls up his sleeve and wonders if they are fighting over something. A servant apologizes for the wait and informs him there has been a sudden change in his opponent. The boy looks up in surprise as a tall, serious warrior appears, holding a wooden sword. The servant announces the opponent is the boy's son, Racist Rinarut. The boy reacts with shock and confusion, staring up at the imposing figure before him. The boy clenches his fist, stunned that he must fight the prince. A maid and a young man cheer him on loudly, urging him to beat the prince badly. He reflects quietly, recalling a request made just before arriving. To break Raisa-sama's spirit once. The boy wonders if this is a noble's wish for Rinarut's best, sensing something mysterious behind it. The boy demands to know if Zack-san was aware of this plan. Pressing him for answers, Zack smiles knowingly but says nothing. The boy nervously admits he just remembered something funny and warns the prince that he really doesn't like him. The prince, facing him, asks why he's smiling. Nearby, a man in a white uniform observes, commenting that the boy looks ready. The man in the white uniform commands the boy and Racist to spar until one surrenders or cannot continue. The boy raises a hand to propose something, asking to make His Majesty Elias the sole judge of who can continue. The man acknowledges the request, agreeing to Elias's authority. The boy walks away, declaring he wouldn't want anyone to interfere with their fun. The prince scowls, calling the boy an annoying brat. The boy smiles confidently as the man in uniform confirms the match won't end until he says so, thanking everyone politely. The opponent taunts Elias, claiming he already lost the moment he stepped into the arena and threatens to send him back to the boonies of Magnolia with his tail between his legs. He mocks Elias's father for being unable to cure a single disease, questioning if Elias even knows how to wield a sword. Elias internally dismisses the insults as childish taunts, though the words sting. The opponent continues his verbal assault, suggesting Elias would be better suited sucking on his bedridden mother's breasts than holding a sword. Elias struggles to brush off the cruel jabs, his expression tightening with shock and discomfort. Elias clenches his weapon tightly, determined not to care about the insults or the mockery of Baldia. Yet, the words cut deep as the opponent insults his mother, who is bravely fighting a deadly disease. Elias suspects someone named Norris fed the opponent his sore points to provoke him. The opponent grins confidently, challenging Elias to respond with wit, but Elias remains silent, his resolve hardening. The tension peaks as both prepare to face off, the opponent shouting for the match to begin, their fierce gazes locked in battle readiness. A dark-haired man with pointed ears smiles knowingly, telling Elias to fight well, calling him his foolish son. Across the arena, Elias faces his opponent, who offers him a chance to surrender and avoid injury. Elias retorts confidently, mocking the offer as empty talk, challenging if talking is all his opponent can do. The dark-haired man scoffs, surprised Elias sees his gesture as goodwill. Elias dismisses the offer as typical empty words, provoking a flash of anger in his opponent. The dark-haired man suddenly charges, raising his sword with a fierce shout. The clash erupts as Elias blocks the powerful strike, their weapons locked in a tense struggle. The opponent's fierce expression shows his frustration as Elias holds firm, eyes sharp and focused. Elias twists sharply, using his grip to unbalance the attacker, sending him crashing to the ground with a forceful throw. The opponent lands hard, stunned by the unexpected counterattack. The opponent gasps in pain, clutching his side, while a group of onlookers reacts with shock and concern. A shadowed figure stands over the fallen man, the tension thick in the air, eyes narrow with determination. The opponent glares fiercely, gripping his sword tightly. Struggling to rise, the opponent snarls not to be mocked. Elias, standing tall and confident, taunts him, demanding if that's all he has. The opponent pants heavily, still on one knee, gripping his sword as Elias towers above him. Both prepare for the next move. Elias calmly raises a hand, while the opponent, sweating intense, vows not to fall for the same trick again. Elias approaches steadily, analyzing his foe's wide, naive swings. The opponent shouts not to be looked down upon, charging forward with renewed resolve. Their swords clash fiercely, the opponent yelling that locking swords means his victory due to his bigger build. Elias's calm expression contrasts with the opponent's strained face, revealing the opponent's thoughts. The battle intensifies as they continue their duel, locked in a fierce struggle of strength and skill. Elias smoothly disarms his opponent, who stumbles back in shock and cries out in disbelief. Seizing the moment, Elias grabs the opponent's kimono, sending him crashing to the ground with a harsh thud. The opponent collapses, defeated, while Elias calmly approaches. Elias points his sword at the fallen opponent, declaring that he's all talk after all. The opponent, sweating and beaten, glares up at him in silence. Nearby onlookers murmur in surprise and admiration, whispering that Rise-sama is acting unexpectedly. The crowd's excitement grows as they praise Rid-sama's skill. The defeated opponent struggles weakly, realizing the gravity of the situation. Elias's sharp gaze meets his, signaling that the fight is truly over. Elias stands tall above his opponent, holding his sword with quiet confidence. He acknowledges silently that his strength is on a completely different level, leaving no doubt who the superior swordsman is. Clenching a trembling fist, the fallen fighter struggles to speak, his voice barely a whisper as he begins to say, I, Sir Dash, before the command cuts through the silence. Stand up. The victor kneels beside him, taunting him for considering surrender. He mocks the fallen prince of Rinarut for yielding to a mere hick from Magnolia, whose mother is sick. He accuses him of shame, pointing out the irony that the prince is the only one wearing protective gear and that he tampered with the victor's sword. The prince's eyes widen as the victor shouts fiercely, demanding he stand up and refusing to let him surrender. The fallen prince's expression twists with pain and hesitation, caught between despair and defiance. The victor's voice hardens, warning that surrender will brand the prince a coward and a wimp, stripping him of respect and potential to be a wise king like his father. The prince, still on the ground, struggles to rise, clutching his sword as the weight of the words and the fight presses down on him. The fallen prince, gripping his sword, defiantly shouts he will defeat his opponent. The victor, sword raised, demands who dares call him a wimp. Their eyes lock, the prince's gaze now fierce and unyielding. The challenger accepts the fight, the look in his eyes unmistakably changed. Their swords clash sharply as the duel resumes. The prince moves with precision and strength, forcing the victor back. The victor's expression hardens, but the prince's skill overwhelms him, sending him sprawling to the ground. The fallen fighter screams in frustration, his face bruised and sweat dripping. From behind, two onlookers watch intently, the woman's long hair flowing as she approaches. The prince stands ready, his stance steady despite the fierce battle. The observers express disbelief at the prince's strength, lamenting their brother's inability to act. The prince's opponent lies defeated, clutching his sword in pain. The woman's eyes glisten with a mix of awe and sorrow, questioning why the prince ended the match so soon despite his clear advantage. It's likely that Rid-sama doesn't care about the match's outcome. When asked what that means, it's explained that he wants to show how strong he is. So he can't lose, but also can't win by treating his opponent as no threat. He can't accept surrender, so they must wait for His Majesty to call the match. The woman expresses relief that Rid-sama doesn't want to do anything bad, sensing the challenger is trying to make him understand something. The woman notes suspicious behavior among the nobles nearby. She decides to check on them, while internally wondering how many times she's knocked the prince down and held her blade to his throat. The challenger, breathing heavily, demands the prince surrender, thinking the situation has become troublesome. He reflects that the prince is more stubborn than expected, and his attempt to break the prince's spirit by showing strength has backfired. The challenger notes the prince will soon run out of stamina, and it seems the match won't be stopped anytime soon. The challenger angrily calls the prince a monster, but the prince denies being a monster, calmly declaring he is a devil. The prince then strikes the challenger forcefully, eliciting a pained yell. The challenger contemplates the prince's stubbornness, suspecting his provocation has only hardened the prince's resolve. He decides to try a different approach and demands to know if the prince's accusations about his sick mother were his own or planted by someone else, pleading for an answer. The prince, exhausted and on the ground, listens as the challenger admits he was the one who spread the rumor. Insisting that's all that matters, the prince reacts with shock and anger, realizing it was Norris behind the scheme. The challenger quietly acknowledges his own certainty about the truth. The challenger demands the prince surrender, warning that continuing will only lead to disaster. The prince shouts back fiercely that he will never surrender, while the challenger remains calm and silent, raising his hand slowly. With a commanding voice and raised hand, the challenger declares to everyone that he surrenders, dropping his weapon and signaling the end of the duel, leaving the prince stunned on the ground. The sun sets behind a grand palace as the chapter begins, signaling a shift in time. The scene settles on the imposing building with a quiet, expectant atmosphere. The words "now then" hint at a new development about to unfold. Inside the palace, His Majesty sits on his throne, surrounded by courtiers kneeling in respect. He asks Rid why he surrendered. The prince, still exhausted, responds calmly that His Majesty should already know the answer. The challenger winces in pain nearby, emphasizing the toll the duel took. The challenger reflects on the match's outcome, admitting it was a complete loss for him. He acknowledges that fighting without surrendering is admirable, but confesses his stubbornness turned into a childish desire to avoid losing. He admits he was only protecting his pride and knew he couldn't defeat Rid, who was going easy on him. The woman questions the challenger about why he insisted on fighting himself despite the advice to surrender. His Majesty expresses disappointment, expecting more wisdom from him. The woman recalls the heated argument between the two men back then. Realizing it was racists behind the conflict, she resolves to convince the challenger with her words. The prince listens intently as the conversation turns to why he acted as he did in the match, despite it being easy to knock out his opponent. The prince requests a private conversation, asking the father to leave so he can speak only with His Majesty Elias, His Highness Rhasis, and Queen Rizel. The father complies, sitting with a commanding presence and inviting the prince to share his reason. The prince, encouraged by a close confidant, is told to see his idea through. The prince explains that His Highness Rhasis spoke to him before the match, warning he would send him back to the boondocks of Magnolia with his tail between his legs. The prince kneels, reflecting on how reckless it was for a royal to say such things in a diplomatic setting. The prince reveals Rhasis mocked his mother for being ill, saying that as her son, he shouldn't wield a sword and should instead return to her for comfort. The prince's expression hardens as he recalls the insult, while the mother and His Majesty watch silently. The prince declares those words unforgivable to him, emphasizing the deep insult from Asa, a member of the Baldia family. The memory of Asa smiling confidently in a floral dress and hat lingers as the prince's resolve strengthens. The woman gasps, covering her mouth in shock as she witnesses the prince's words. The prince kneels, eyes clenched shut in anguish. His Majesty asks Rhasis if the prince's accusations are true. Rhasis remains silent, his expression grim. The king's voice turns cold and sharp as he calls Rhasis an idiot. The king's fury erupts as he scolds Rhasis for insulting a noble of an allied country and a candidate to marry his sister. He demands Rhasis have some shame, his voice echoing through the hall. The woman stands quietly, watching the confrontation unfold, while the prince remains kneeling. The prince reflects that if the king was going to shout, clearing the room was pointless. The king approaches, sword drawn, declaring that Rhasis no longer needs his head. The prince remains silent, bracing himself for the outcome. The prince admits he has no excuse and that everything Rid said is true. He pleads that his actions were for the future of Rinarut and his little sister, Farah, who is only 6 years old. He insists a child so young shouldn't be sent alone to a foreign land, and if she must go, it should be to the imperial family. His voice breaks with desperation and conviction. The prince stands stunned as a voice accuses him of being short-sighted, warning that the empire is far larger and stronger than their own country. He is told he didn't even realize what he said, blindly parroting suspicious words. The accusation hits hard, sending his sister away to a den of villains worse than Rinarut, making her a mere cog in a power game. He reels in denial, clutching his head, convinced marrying her to the empire should bring her happiness. Another voice sternly reminds him that a prince shouldn't repeat such careless words. Overwhelmed, the prince's tears spill uncontrollably as he screams in anguish, collapsing to the floor. The weight of the confrontation crushes him, his emotions breaking free in a torrent of despair. Kneeling, the prince finally acknowledges his own mistake, his head bowed low. He apologizes sincerely, admitting he was wrong to lash out with harsh words. The young man beside him urges that an apology alone won't suffice. They must apologize as a country, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. The prince, still tearful, nervously tries to ease the tension, pleading that he doesn't have to go so far, even performing a humble bow. The prince solemnly agrees to the need for a national apology, his resolve firm despite the weight of responsibility. The other man expresses confidence that the prince will make his sister a happy woman and urges him to treat her well. The prince responds with a hesitant but earnest okay. As the scene widens, showing the tense but hopeful atmosphere among them, the young man apologizes to his father for the trouble he has caused, but the father harshly calls him a fool. Suddenly, a woman and the young man react with shock and fear as the father raises a sword, prompting the young man to exclaim in alarm. The woman pleads tearfully for mercy, reminding the king that the young man is still a child and bound to make mistakes. The young man accepts the severity of his crime and requests a final wish from his father. The young man begs his father to treat his mother better and love her as he loves the other woman, insisting he has never favored either of them. The woman and the father show surprise and shock, while the young man's expression hardens with resolve. The father raises his sword to execute the young man, who shouts that he never wanted this to happen. The young man laments that this is not what he expected at all, while the woman covers her face in despair. The young man shouts desperately for the king to wait, insisting he never asked for this punishment. His voice trembles as he pleads, realizing he must stop the unfolding tragedy. The king's stern face and a silent onlooker's anxious expression contrast sharply with the gleaming sword poised to strike. The young man explains that the only reason he forced Ray-Sis into the match was to make him regret his actions, emphasizing that Ray-Sis will become his brother once the marriage is arranged. He cries out that he doesn't want to lose that bond. Nearby, the king hesitates silently, his expression unreadable, while the young man watches anxiously. The young man reveals he sent his father out of the room, so only they would know the truth of what happened. The young man calmly states he has several requests and offers to forgive the offender if the king fulfills them. He asks the king to hear him out before deciding. The king narrows his eyes, gripping his sword tightly, then agrees, asking what conditions the young man demands. The young man wonders if this was the king's plan all along, relieved but cautious, while a small, chibi version of himself doubts the situation. The young man demands the king support a company, explaining that mutual trade will benefit both lands. He points to the Christie Company, famous in Baldia, and asks for the king's help to ease the harsh treatment Rinarut gives to new businesses. The king agrees and tells him to bring the company's president next time. A cheerful woman appears, bringing good news for Christie, while the young man beams with gratitude and hope. The young man boldly demands the king accept the marriage between himself and Princess Farah. The king's eyes widen in surprise as the young man asks if he is sure about this. He reasons that if His Majesty, Queen Riesel, and Prince Ray-Sis all accept the marriage, then it should be considered settled. The scene softens with a focus on a bouquet of lilies as the young man confidently replies, "Yeah." The young man quietly leans in to whisper to the king, asking him to lend an ear for a moment. The king listens intently, while a woman kneels silently nearby. The king chuckles, understanding the situation, and agrees to keep it discreet for now, saying he will allow the young man to inform his father later. With a firm gesture, the king accepts the marriage to his daughter and signals that there is one last matter to address. The young man pleads for forgiveness for Ray-Sis's crimes, sitting humbly in a traditional outfit. He explains he only wants to protect his potential future brother and believes Ray-Sis was influenced by a bad force. The king and the kneeling woman react with shock and tears, while the young man asks Ray-Sis for his thoughts. The kneeling man expresses deep gratitude for the mercy shown to him and vows to start anew if given the chance. The king declares he will gladly accept all the young man's requests but insists this agreement remains a secret. The group stands in a grand room, the king emphasizing the importance of keeping this confidential. The young man admits he is no match for Rid, neither in swordsmanship nor in character. As he shakes hands with the imposing figure, the woman watches silently, her expression unreadable. The wounded woman smiles with tears in her eyes, while the young man watches two figures approaching. A soldier carrying a girl and another man walking ahead. The woman in the floral dress looks surprised, questioning why Princess Farah has arrived. The young man wonders if this match has resolved everything. The woman in uniform, accompanied by her bodyguard, addresses Rid formally, offering a match with her bodyguard, Asuna landmark. The young man reacts with wide eyes, caught off guard by the proposal. During the fight between Rid and Ray-Sis, disbelief fills the air. How could this be possible? Ray-Sis is no weak swordsman, and the Marquis' son is even younger. The man curses the meddlesome maid, wishing Ray-Sis had used the wooden sword he had prepared. The maid silently grips the wooden sword, her expression unreadable. The maid faces the group, demanding the meaning behind their accusations and whether they intend to insult her master. Her grip tightens on the wooden sword, causing a sudden crack that shocks the onlookers. Calmly, the maid admits she is weak and frail but managed to break the sword. She challenges who is truly insulting whom now, refusing a replacement sword. She insists on choosing one herself and demands to be shown the storage room. The man seethes in frustration, calling her a meddlesome little troublemaker. Alone outside, he calls out into the woods, demanding whoever is there to come out. A shadowed figure questions why he was summoned to such a secluded place. The other man apologizes, insisting the matter is urgent and asks if there is a better plan. The shadowed figure scolds him, saying if he can't solve such a simple problem, he must have been overestimated. He reveals the Marquis' son is a monster and urges him to expose what the Marquis' son is doing to the prince. The other man asks what he means. The shadowed figure explains that perception shapes opinion, and mid-ranking nobles supporting the engagement will not be happy to see their prince dominated. He warns that the prince will keep being beaten until he surrenders. The solution is to spread rumors, which the other man is skilled at. It seems King Elias has no intention of stopping the match. The challenger and Asuna landmark stand before Asa, who is shocked to learn he must fight another match. The princess insists the sparring match is necessary to dispel the ill intentions and rumors spreading through the hall. She pleads with her father to listen, while the king looks on with a sharp gaze. Asa demands an explanation. The challenger reports they were tailing a noble but lost him. Though they picked up a rumor, it claims the Marquis's son enjoys torturing the prince with overwhelming strength and has a cruel, sadistic, inhumane side. Voices debate whether the Marquis's son has gone too far, showing off his strength in the match. They warn that if the princess marries him, she will become a hostage, forcing everyone to obey him. They plead for help, revealing Noristano's concern for the future. The man with a braid agrees to listen and gestures for them to follow. The challenger and the woman exchange a tense glance as they prepare to move. The group discusses the opposition faction's moves, warning that falling into their trap is a risk. Norris is identified as the key figure behind the unrest. The princess acknowledges the awkwardness of the situation for her and her brother. The king questions how a match between Asuna and the challenger will resolve the conflict. The princess confidently states that she and Asuna have devised a plan. The challenger explains that Princess Farah has shared the plan with them. They will gather the nobles again, and Raisis will deny rumors about the match's length. Some will remain unconvinced. So the challenger will fight Asuna with all his strength to prove Raisis's words true. By showing his true power, he aims to erase the bad impression he left. The princess insists this plan will preserve everyone's honor. The king praises her intelligence. Comparing it to her mother's, Asa, surprised, calls out to his father. The king turns away, leaving the princess and Asa standing together, the weight of the plan settling over them. The king asks if Raisis, Asa, and Rid agree to proceed with Princess Farah's plan. They all affirm. Raisis explains that the match was only prolonged because of stubbornness, not Rid's fault. Still, some nobles remain unconvinced. The king acknowledges the doubt and announces a second match between Princess Farah's bodyguard, Asuna Landmark, and Rid. He invites everyone to witness Rid's strength again. A sly figure remarks this time Rid will surely lose. Though it wasn't planned, the king tells Asuna and Rid to start the match when ready. Asuna, holding a wooden practice sword, feels thrilled at the rare chance to fight someone like Rid. She admits it's been ages since she last felt this excited. Meanwhile, a man sneaks up behind her, surprised to see her. The man reveals he came to recruit Asuna to the opposition faction, proposing a deal. Make the Marquis's son suffer and secretly promise to withdraw from the marriage. He offers to mend things between her and her brothers and pull strings to release her from duty as the princess's bodyguard, so she can return to the Landmark family. Asuna reacts with disbelief, calling him shameless. She warns not to get the wrong idea, then declares she has no attachment to the Landmark family anymore and tells him to count her out. He reacts in disbelief, asking if this is how she repays his kindness as she walks away. He shouts that she will never be able to return to the country or the Landmark family again, questioning if she really wants to waste her life like that. She points a sword at him, declaring her pride in being the princess's bodyguard and warns him never to speak to her again, or she will take it as an insult to both herself and the princess. He turns away with a frustrated grunt. The tension breaks as she smiles and says she looks forward to the upcoming match. He brightens up and eagerly agrees, sharing the same sentiment. After the match, he explains he used physical strengthening magic throughout, wondering if he'll be accused of cheating. She praises his mastery of strengthening at such a young age, assuring him it wasn't cheating and only very few noticed. They both agree it's good that the prince was too immature to notice. The challenger reveals he was ordered by the princess to fight seriously, drawing two swords with a confident, almost teasing smile as he apologizes in advance if he ends up hurting his opponent. Asa, shocked, notices the dual swords and braces himself. The match officially begins with a commanding voice, and the challenger launches forward with incredible speed, catching Asa off guard. He struggles to keep up, amazed by her swift movements. She suddenly appears in his blind spot, preparing to strike with precision. The challenger reacts quickly, anticipating her attack as they clash swords in a flurry of motion. Spotting an opening, Asa seizes the moment and swings her weapon with determination, shouting that she's got him. The challenger remains composed, ready to respond as the battle intensifies. The challenger executes a breathtaking somersault, flipping through the air with his dual swords poised, catching Asa completely off guard. Asa's eyes widen in shock as he realizes the unexpected maneuver. Asuna approaches Rid with a serious expression, asking to speak with him. The challenger smirks confidently, lowering his hat slightly as he advances. Asa, holding his sword steady, is amazed by the challenger's swift reaction and determination, silently pleading for strength. The challenger raises his hand, gripping one sword tightly, and commands Rid to forgive Asuna no matter how she acts during the match. His fierce gaze burns with intensity as he vows to push Rid to his limits, demanding he show everything he's capable of. The crowd gasps in awe as the challenger stands confidently with arms crossed, Watching the match unfold, Asa charges forward, shouting a fierce battle cry as their swords clash with a sharp impact. The two duel intensely, their swords creating a whirlwind of energy around them. Asa, sweating but determined, asks the challenger to hold back a little. The challenger replies that doing so would betray the princess's order, maintaining the fierce pace. The challenger executes a flawless somersault, flipping through the air while wielding dual swords. Asa reacts with shock, barely blocking the unexpected attack. The challenger smirks, tipping his hat with a teasing grin. The challenger acknowledges Asa's agility, noting her ability to perform both backward and forward somersaults. Asa internally admires the challenger's strength and resolves to push herself to match his skill, determined to show everything she's got. The challenger commands a mana measurement, revealing his mana at 5,480 points, while Asuna's is 2,200. Asa acknowledges he has more mana, just as expected, and reflects that both are currently relying on body strengthening. He resolves to turn the match into a battle of attrition, aiming to outlast Asuna's incredible swordsmanship until she runs out of mana. The challenger, smiling confidently, asks if Asa has more to show and invites him to let her have some fun, recalling how she wore down Sis. He calmly prepares his sword, smiling with a sense of karmic justice, readying himself for the next exchange. The two opponents charge at each other, swords drawn, poised for the next clash. Asuna shouts a spirited good luck to both fighters, her voice full of encouragement. The duel intensifies as the challenger and Asa engage in swift, precise swordplay, their movements watched closely by onlookers who react with surprise and anticipation. Voices rise from the crowd, urging Asuna on with cheers to show the pride of Rinarut and to push harder against the challenger. A man clenches his fist in fervent support, while an elf boy's expression shifts from nervousness to determination. The same elf boy shouts that Asuna is the best swordsman and urges her to finish the fight. Nearby, a young woman and man ask a seated noble named Rainer if they may cheer for Rid as well, to which he agrees with a calm smile. The young man and maid call out together, encouraging Rid to show the results of his training with Rainer. The noble watches intently, asserting that his son must not lose. Asuna clenches her fist, recalling a past match and feeling ashamed of her earlier behavior. She calls out to win for their sake. While a woman gently comforts her, the challenger, observing the lively scene, remarks on how spirited the match has become. The challenger struggles to find an opening against Asuna's brutal two-sword style, overwhelmed by the way her wooden swords strike from both sides at different timings. He notes her constantly shifting movements and footwork, leaving him clueless on how to catch her. Asuna praises the challenger's rare and practical sword style, acknowledging his courage to face her two-sword technique. He admits knowing stronger swordsmen who taught him, vowing not to lose here. The challenger accepts the challenge with renewed determination. The fight intensifies as Asuna lunges fiercely, forcing the challenger to take the duel more seriously. Their wooden swords clash violently, the challenger grimacing as he struggles to keep up. The challenger braces himself, gripping his sword tightly as Asuna taunts him to give his best. Frustration shows as he mutters under his breath, sensing something troubling him during the fight. His focus sharpens as he realizes the cause. Mana measurement. The challenger notices his mana points at 1640, while Asuna's remain higher at 1900. He realizes body strengthening's mana consumption depends on the user's expertise and that Asuna has been training longer. Memories of fighting his father and Rubens flash through his mind. He admits he can't win by attrition alone and contemplates a new approach. The challenger raises his wooden sword, determined as he declares his next attack will decide everything. He challenges Asuna, asking if she will dodge, and she confidently replies she won't, telling him to give his best shot. Nearby, onlookers watch tensely. With a fierce shout, the challenger swings his sword down in a powerful strike. Asuna blocks the attack, gritting her teeth under the force. The clash intensifies as their swords collide with a sharp impact, their movements locked in a fierce duel. The challenger extends his hand as wooden splinters fly from the clash. Asuna's confident voice declares the fight is over, calling him by name. His eyes widen in shock and determination, sensing the battle's turning point. The challenger lunges forward, shouting that it's not over yet as he grabs Asuna's wooden sword mid-swing. His eyes widen with fierce determination, refusing to yield despite the overwhelming force. A burst of energy explodes outward, sending dust and debris swirling across the battlefield. Asuna stands quietly, her expression calm and resolute amid the chaos. The challenger collapses to the ground, exhausted and defeated, a strained smile breaking through his fatigue. Asuna approaches steadily, her presence commanding as she declares the fight truly over. The announcer solemnly proclaims Asuna Landmark the winner of the match, prompting cheers and applause from the gathered crowd as she stands victorious, her figure framed by the celebrating onlookers. The young man winces as a maid scolds him sharply, while a composed figure with long braided hair smiles knowingly nearby. The maid's stern expression contrasts with the elf's relieved smile. The long-haired figure then extends a hand to help the young man up from the ground. The long-haired figure, now standing confidently, addresses the young man as Rid-sama. Expressing gratitude with a warm smile, the young man, still holding his wooden sword, admits the match was refreshing and amazing. Though a bit embarrassing, suddenly, a woman with long dark hair calls out loudly, drawing their attention. The woman excitedly praises the young man, acknowledging his loss but marveling at how far he pushed Asuna. The young man laughs gently, clearly pleased by the compliment. The scene shifts to a peaceful exterior of a traditional building as the conversation continues. Inside, a man with a mustache praises the sparring match as the most inspiring they've ever witnessed. Another figure with long hair stands beside the young man and the long-haired woman. All facing the crowd, the mustached man challenges anyone still unsatisfied with Rid's strength to speak up immediately, his gaze sharp and commanding. The man with pointed ears and a mustache addresses Norris, noting even he has no complaints and asking if he recognizes Ridano's strength. Norris confirms with a simple yes. Though Rid's expression suggests disagreement, the man continues, acknowledging Ridano's outstanding talent and implying something significant. Rid, exhausted, quietly mutters good grief, as the man expresses his desire to see Rid's talent for magic as well. Rid responds respectfully, saying he doesn't mind showing his magic, but requests a break first due to exhaustion from the match. The man agrees, declaring that Rid shall demonstrate his magic after a short rest. The scene shifts to a traditional building with a crowd, while figures, including a long-haired elf, move away from the area. Alone, the long-haired elf leans against a wall, frustrated and cursing under his breath. His thoughts reveal doubt and regret over using Ray-Sis as a sacrificial pawn and questioning the planning of the sparring match, despite it having wiped out all the bad rumors he had spread. A dark shadow looms, and a voice warns that cursing someone means digging two graves. The long-haired elf, furious, shouts that he followed orders exactly and threatens that if he falls, others will too. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupts, saying he's misunderstanding the situation. The shadow accuses him of being the true culprit behind recent events, despite having cooperated only because of his power to unite the opposition. The elf grimaces in pain, struggling to respond. The shadow warns him not to take them lightly. The elf, sweating and tense, stammers, questioning what the shadow is. The shadow mockingly tells him he has the devil's luck and urges him to give it his all. The elf, grimacing in pain and frustration, curses the shadow's audacity. Suddenly, a gentle voice offers help, noting he doesn't look well. The elf's expression shifts into a strained smile as he listens. The elf woman stands firm, her gaze steady and resolute as she declares that her fight is far from over. A maid praises Rid for his wonderful match, wiping a tear from her eye. A man in formal attire commends Rid for holding out so long and proudly calls him his son. Rid smiles gratefully. Suddenly, a gloved hand pats Rid's head, startling him with a surprised wah. The man continues to pat Rid's head, who reacts with repeated surprised sounds. Both the maid and the man smile warmly. Rid blinks with a soft expression as the man advises him not to overdo magic next time, suggesting he stick to normal magic since he's already shown his capability. Rid agrees, explaining that Sandra told him standing out too much might not be the best, even though it protects him from being torn down. Two women, one with long elf-like ears and a military uniform, the other in a floral dress, approach carrying drinks. They offer Rid a local drink from Rinarut, which he accepts with curiosity. He sniffs the drink, recognizing the smell, and asks if it's green tea. The woman excitedly confirms he knows it. Rid sips the tea, visibly soothed and delighted by the taste, calling it so soothing and so cute. Nearby, the maid, the woman, and the man watch with gentle smiles. The man then calls out to Rid, saying it's about time to start and asks if he's ready. Rid responds enthusiastically with a clear yes. The challenger steps forward with a determined glare, thinking about Norris's relentless efforts. From the inner palace to matches with Ray-Sis and Asuna, now even using magic, despite his grudges. He admits being almost impressed but cannot forgive Norris's lies about his mother. Meanwhile, Asa looks to the training post, wondering if he just needs to hit it. Their eyes meet, tension rising. The challenger reveals he requested His Majesty Elias's permission for Asa to demonstrate his magic up close, instructing him to shoot a fireball on his signal. He scoffs at Asa's power, calling him a small child and pathetic for stopping him at every turn. Asa asks what he means, standing firm despite the taunts. The challenger bluntly asks Asa to withdraw from the engagement, claiming the princess is Rinarut's trump card and Asa is not good enough. Asa refuses, acknowledging he might not understand the politics but will not back down. The challenger scoffs, dismissing Asa's resolve, while Asa's gaze sharpens with quiet determination. Asa accuses the challenger of wanting to plant Princess Farah at the Empire's center to use the Dark Elf's long lifespan to control it from within. The challenger smirks, admitting he likes smart kids like Asa. Narration reveals Norris's pride has been wounded by his country's vassal status, fueling his anger and desire to use Princess Farah as a tool for revenge. The challenger sneers, calling the other man self-centered. Asa clenches his fist, declaring Princess Farah is not a tool to be used. He insists the future belongs to kids, not old men like the challenger, accusing him of treating children as disposable tools and claiming he could never bear Rinarut's future. The challenger responds that Asa is still a kid and reveals he has the dark side of the country supporting him. He warns Asa that even if he refuses to withdraw, he has plans for that too. Asa asks if the challenger intends to have him killed. The challenger admits it's a possibility but acknowledges Asa and Rainer would be tough opponents. The challenger leans close, questioning Asa about the rest of his family. He mentions Asa's little sister, a sickly mother he loves, and the people working at his mansion. With a single word from him, their peaceful lives could collapse. Asa is speechless, overwhelmed by the threat. Asa's thoughts race, worrying about Mel and his mother, while the challenger smiles knowingly. The challenger tells Asa it looks like he understands now. Then, the challenger orders Ridsama to fire his magic at the target, signaling the next phase of the test. Asa nods, steeling himself for what comes next. Asa clenches his fist, his resolve hardening as he admits that Norris is definitely his enemy now. He would have given Norris a chance if only he was targeting him, but threatening the people Asa loves makes it unforgivable, just ego and spite driving him. A swirling magical force appears as Asa challenges the challenger to explain what he intends to do to his family. The challenger reacts with surprise, but Asa dares him to repeat his threat, eyes blazing with fierce determination. Power surges around Asa as he shouts for the challenger to say it again, his voice filled with raw intensity and bloodlust. His hand rises, commanding the magic with overwhelming force. The challenger recoils, shocked by the terrifying power Asa unleashes. His eyes widen in disbelief as the swirling energy intensifies. Asa's thoughts race, questioning what happens when mana is compressed after casting a spell, while the scene shifts to a grand building under a bright sky. Sandra questions Asa, surprised by his thoughts on mana compression, admitting she's never heard anyone consider it before. Asa explains he thought compressing mana might boost spell power and wants to experiment under her supervision. Sandra agrees but warns him to stop immediately if it becomes dangerous. Asa casts a normal fire spear spell as a baseline, asking if it was compressed. Sandra notes it felt no different. Asa smiles, saying it was just a point of comparison. Sandra prepares for the next test. He silently focuses, chanting the spell name Fire Spear, as he channels mana steadily. Locking in the spell's form, he concentrates, determined to pour more mana into the spell than before. Power feedback surges in Asa's hand, growing stronger as he pushes further. He urges himself to keep going, demanding more power. His eyes widen in shock as the mana intensifies beyond expectation. Asa struggles desperately to control the overwhelming mana surging through him, sweat dripping as he clenches his fist. A woman urgently shouts for him to stop. He raises his hand, unleashing a massive swirling spell that radiates immense power. The woman approaches Asa, warning that compressing magic is far too dangerous and must be banned for now. She explains that such power could rival large-scale magic and overturn the fundamentals of offensive spells. Asa, still on the ground, questions if it's really that serious. The woman turns away, adding there's more to consider. Asa nods in understanding. Asa casts a colossal spell, the destructive force roaring above him. A man with long dark hair yells in panic, apologizing and begging for forgiveness. Admitting he went too far, Asa screams back, refusing to forgive him. A sharp-eyed man demands to know what kind of magic Asa used, cautioning him not to be reckless. Asa is thrown back violently, gasping in pain. A maid restrains the dark-haired man, who insists he did nothing and was attacked unexpectedly. Another man accuses him of blinding Asa with anger, while Asa glares fiercely, eyes burning with intensity. The challenger screams in fury, accusing someone of threatening his family, his mother Mel, and everyone at his home, declaring it unforgivable and that he will never forgive him. A massive swirling spell looms overhead as he shouts a curse. A man panics, denying any wrongdoing and claiming he only told someone to hit the target. Another man angrily scolds him for feigning ignorance in such a situation, calling him a fool. The challenger raises his hand defiantly, vowing to reveal the truth if others won't. The challenger unleashes a powerful sweeping attack, forcing two people to shield themselves. A maid pleads with him to stop, insisting they won't kill anyone no matter the reason for his rage, reminding him that killing in a fit of anger isn't like him. The challenger shouts for them to get away from the man he's targeting. Asuna Landmark cries out, begging the challenger not to take matters into his own hands. Two others urge restraint, telling him he doesn't need to act alone. The challenger hesitates, sweat dripping down his face. As a voice warns him not to dirty his hands, he quietly acknowledges this, the weight of the situation settling on him. The challenger, now resolved, grips his sword tightly and declares he will perform the last rites. As he moves to strike, a sharp sound cuts through the air, and a startled cry escapes, signaling the clash of blades. The man gasps for breath, sweat pouring down his face as he struggles to comprehend the situation. The challenger's cold eyes warn him to prepare for the next strikes. First his arms, then his legs, and finally his head. The man protests, shocked and desperate, insisting this isn't how things should end. Nearby, Asa clutches his side, alarmed, calling out to Asuna. Asuna's inner turmoil intensifies, questioning why her limbs won't respond and why no one is coming to her aid. She realizes she has played right into Rid's hands, provoking him exactly as intended. The man, battered and breathless, admits he did everything Rid told him to do. A stern figure named Norris approaches, promising a serious conversation later. He apologizes to Rid for the insolence of one of his retainers, who dared threaten the family of the boy betrothed to his daughter. Rid, still tense, is reminded that the law exists to judge criminals and that this is not a burden he must bear alone. Asa, overwhelmed, struggles to hold back tears. Asuna, with tears glistening in her eyes, addresses Rid with heartfelt sorrow for the harm caused by her countrymen. She pleads with him to calm down, her gentle words reaching him as he breaks down in tears, the weight of the moment crashing over him. Asa raises his hand, apologizing quietly for lashing out so harshly, his voice trembling with regret. A powerful, swirling magical force erupts nearby, crackling with energy as it surges through the air. The magical blast streaks across the sky, fading as it passes over a traditional building and a quiet street where people walk calmly, unaware of the recent turmoil. A woman with long hair and a large bow turns her head sharply, eyes wide with surprise at the fading magic overhead. A man in a formal uniform steps forward, his expression stern as he remarks that he was never told Asa had been trained in such destructive magic. Asa, sweating and shaken, admits with difficulty that he was not taught that magic by his father. His face tightens with the weight of the revelation. Asa collapses to his knees, supported by two women and watched over by the stern man and others nearby. He murmurs that the fireball was just that. Fireball magic. His eyes close slowly, exhaustion and sorrow washing over him as those around him look on with concern. A sharp cry of frustration echoes from the castle as a man clenches his head in despair, furious that his plan was ruined by a powerful magic wielded by a brat. He questions why his supposed ally did nothing to help and cannot accept the humiliation. Deep below the castle, a dimly lit cell awaits. The infamous prison room is revealed, a place where all who enter face assassination and murder. The man inside struggles with disbelief, refusing to accept his fate, insisting he still has something important to do. The heavy iron door creaks open as a figure announces the arrival of His Majesty Elias. The prisoner bows deeply, begging forgiveness and claiming his actions were for the country, following orders from another. Elias stands sternly, flanked by a hooded figure, as the prisoner desperately pleads for his life. Suddenly, the prisoner gasps in shock, clutching his throat while others react with alarm and confusion, questioning what just happened. A hooded figure with a monocle reveals himself as Zach Rivorton. Shocking the prisoner, Zach swiftly strikes the prisoner, who screams in pain as the attack lands. A voice warns Zach not to be too rough, apologizing that the prisoner was in the way. The prisoner and others question why Zach is here. The king demands an explanation, telling Zach to speak. Zach sighs, calling the king unkind. Zach begins explaining, recounting how the crisis started with the Balst emergency and the alliance with the Empire. He reveals that the alliance was a facade, making their kingdom a vassal state, which many nobles, including the prisoner, protested vehemently. Zach continues, explaining that they had no choice but to accept the Empire's proposal to ensure their nation's survival. However, the opposing faction destabilized internal politics, so the king devised a plan to let dissatisfied people form factions and voice opinions freely, only to be dealt with all at once when the time comes. The prisoner Norris is confronted with the truth. He is the centerpiece of a larger plan. Shocked, he questions how he was never suspected despite working alone while others did not. A sinister figure suggests an alternative plan, while another explains that the king was troubled because he could not dismiss Norris's opinions. Norris vehemently denies the accusations, calling them lies and refusing to believe such foolishness. A shadowy voice accuses him of being used all along. He realizes the shadow who approached him was working for the opposition. A hooded figure named Capella appears, silently acknowledging Norris's years of hard work. Norris is visibly shaken, sweat dripping down his face as he processes this revelation. The hooded figure and another man declare they now have all the facts on the opposition, and only the purge remains. Norris erupts in anger, shouting that the purge is impossible because too many people are needed by the country. The other man scolds him for arrogance, blaming the Dark Elves' long lifespans for their falling behind and accusing them of disgracing themselves in old age. A shadowy figure challenges the old guard, insisting that the future is not built by old men, and that Rid spelled it out clearly. The man called Capella is revealed as the shadow lurking nearby, shocking the other man as he realizes how long Capella has been in his shadow. The king confronts Ray-Sis, accusing him of gambling with his own son and dismissing claims that Ray-Sis was manipulated. He insists that protecting the country is the true meaning of being king and admits to having a little hope for Ray-Sis now. A woman reminds Norris that Eltia has been on his side all along and offers to help him use his silver tongue to provoke Rid Baldia into a rage. She reveals Norris was the only one kept in the dark, emphasizing her support. Norris, overwhelmed, realizes he was led along and danced in the palm of another's hand. He is accused of high treason and presented with two choices: be assassinated tomorrow morning or take his own life with a poison that promises a peaceful death. The man named Zach recommends the poison with a calm smile. The man known as Elias warns that time is running out and that the other may curse his own foolish actions for this fate. He turns away, coldly stating the inevitable. The other man, kneeling and sweating, seethes with rage, vowing to get Ray-Sis on the throne and control the country from the shadows, declaring that Elias should never have taken the throne. His twisted smile declares, "That's perfect." Elias summons dark energy in his hand and shouts that to achieve his goals, the other must get out of his way. The other man leaps forward, ready to confront him, while Elias's command echoes fiercely. The two clash violently, swords slashing through the air with fierce intensity. Their faces show determination and fury as they engage in a deadly duel. Capella watches from the side, calmly applauding Elias's swing and calling it splendid. Elias, standing over the fallen body of his opponent, warns not to mock him, admitting the man was more foolish than he expected. He orders the body to be cleaned up and displayed after the Baldia family's visit concludes, leaving a dark stain on the floor as the scene closes. Elias orders to throw salt on the fallen body to prevent it from rotting, his tone cold and commanding. Capella stands silently nearby, listening as the command is given, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Under the moonlit sky, the narration reflects on the man whose life was filled with egocentrism and malice, ironically preserved in salt, symbolizing the downfall that led his country to become a vassal state. Rumors of his downfall begin to spread among the lower noble families, and a shadowed figure urgently states they need to hurry.